like to welcome everyone out tonight. We'll begin with the first part of our meeting, public hearing regarding proposed 2019-2020 school budget. And this is a continuation from the conversation that we had on Monday of last week. Ms. Wongman, if we'll have you take a seat.
So as Mr. Clausen mentioned, this is a continuation of the budgetary hearings because of a little bit of a snafu on the part of our publisher around the budget. We decided to just go ahead and do 2 budgetary hearings. So this is the second of those hearings. Beginning July 1 through June 30th, the 2019-2020 school district budget will be adopted. The board hopefully will adopt this budget tonight. If the board decides not to adopt the budget tonight for whatever reason, 90% of the current year's budget would automatically go into force. Per pupil revenue is projected to be $8,057. This is a 4.4% increase over the current PPR, $338 per student increase. In this budget, there's also a 0.25% increase to the para contributions. The estimated cost to the district is $78,600 for that. A big piece to this budget is that kindergarten students, when they come back to school this upcoming fall, will be funded at 1.0 FTE as opposed to the 0.58 of a student in previous years. There's also an increase in budgeted funding from the state for special education students, $113,000 for Tier B students. These are students that are a bit more severe on the matrix, so the additional funding for us will be welcome. These dollars were, of course, added into school-based budgets as we flowed the dollars through the budget. Also of note, we talked a little bit about this in June, is that the one-time costs associated with the installation of the modulars is in the current year's budget. But the rentals, those monthly rental expenses, which will continue for the next 2 years, are in the 1920 budget and will also be in the 2021 budget as we move forward. And Casey and I and Mr. Foster had a bit of a conversation about that just today. If you look at the budget book and you look at our year-over-year district budgeted FTE, you'll see that we're budgeting an increase of 175 student FTE. That really consists of 2 parts. The first part is the increase in student enrollment, in number of students walking through our doors. That is a projected increase of 83 students, or 83 FTE. And then 92 students are being added to this because of the all-day kindergarten funding and moving the students from the 0.58 to the 1.0 that we talked about on that last slide. All right, is everyone, are you good with that? Okay. Just to note, though, Monument Academy chose not to adjust their budget for all-day kinder at this point. They will in their October budget adjustment, but the legislature decided to move forward with all-day kindergarten very late in the year, and by that time, Monument Academy already had their budget worked through. They will be having all-day kindergarten for their students, though, as well. This budget contains a 3% average wage increase for staff paid from the teacher's salary schedule. It has a 2.5 plus increase for classified staff. The minimum increase is 2.5%. It depends on market analysis for their various positions. And we talked about this a bit before, that we do a market analysis of similarly situated classified staff members across El Paso County and then adjust accordingly. There's a 3% wage increase for administrative staff members, a 5.5% district cost increase for health, dental, and life insurance costs. We did continue to ensure that the school-based budgeting is maintained for this upcoming school year. And this budget also includes approximately half the fixed costs necessary to open the additional middle school. The funds for this year, as we have discussed, will be designated for conversion costs related to the Lewis Palmer Middle School conversion. Creekside Middle School conversion. Moving Bear Creek into Creekside, and yes, moving Bear Creek into Creekside, and the work that it's going to take associated with turning that now elementary school back to middle school. The budget is balanced. Our expenditures are budgeted using current resources. In light of the state's structural imbalance, this continues to be important. Good news, and we talked about it a bit with the increase per student of $338 per student, the state's negative factor or budgeted stabilization factor is estimated to drop now to 7.5%. That's still $658 per pupil and is $4.4 million out of this budget. But that is a significant decrease from where we've been in the past at the 9%. During the height of the recession, we actually reached 16%, which was basically at that time $1,000 per student. Now we're down to $658 per student. But it's important to note that accumulation of negative factor or budget of stabilization factor that is now known as has now accumulated to be $51.2 million as of June 30th, 2019. So a year from now, that number of 51.2 million will be closer to 55 million. If you do the math, it just keeps growing every year.
And that's lost to our budget.
Yes, to just our district.
It's in the billions for the state.
It's true. It was at the height, I believe, Karen, you're right, it was over $1 billion per year. Yes, for the statewide budget. The budget is prepared and presented within the framework of state law. We do hold adequate reserves to meet table requirements, carryover approvals, encumbrances, unanticipated emergencies, and all other board reserve requirements. As you all know, this caps off an extensive year-round budgeting process. We worked through the calendar at this time, and community input has been garnered, as has district accountability, or DAC. Administrative and staff have been involved in the process, and this is our second hearing, so here we are today. Just a bit about our budget. We are now at 104, 205, 138 in appropriations for all funds. And just so you know, that appropriation is equal to beginning fund balance plus revenues for each fund. And our beginning fund balance plus our revenues has to be equal to our expenditures plus our ending fund balance reserves, if you will, for our budget to be in balance. And that's why you see on the appropriation that same number on both sides. Our largest fund is the general fund at 68% of all dollars. The next largest fund is the charter school fund at 12%. As you might expect, the charter school is primarily funded from 100% of those PPR dollars flowing from District 38 over to Monument Academy. You can see the rest of the funds. The other major fund for us is the bond redemption fund. That is funded from taxpayers, from their tax bills and mill levies, and then the funds are used to pay off debt service for the given year. Going on, now working over to our revenue for the general fund. We're budgeting $61.4 million. You can see that state equalization is at 62%, property taxes are at 21%. We have the mill levy override at 7%, and you can see the other miscellaneous items such as specific ownership, which is 5%. Specific ownership is primarily from taxes off of vehicles.
Cheryl, may I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
So on that revenue split that you just shared, the local property tax portion of this really goes to the state, and we get a PPR, right? You're just breaking down how much of it comes from local property tax versus the state.
That is correct. And just to go a little bit on, I think Mr. Taylor made a point which I really wanted to get to, but perhaps my successor will. You made the point of how over the years the state's backfill, which is at 62%, plus our taxes comes to our PPR. But if our assessed valuation increases, the state gets that difference. And it would, in fact, I think, be a very interesting study to take 10 years worth of history and see the breakdown. Right now, our assessed valuation increased by 15%. But state funding increased by 4.4%. Now, we did have student growth, but if you think about just that balance right there, the state did pretty well on that equation. So it would be an interesting study. Transfers to other funds. We get the dollars into the general fund and then we transfer out to other funds to support those funds. The largest transfer out, of course, is the Monument Academy transfer out. As discussed earlier, they receive 100% of PPR, and starting July 1, you'll see, and you see this change in the accounting and in the budget book, they receive 100% of their allocation of MLO funds, and then they buy back services from us. So you see that represented in the budget. We transfer out money for our insurance reserve fund, that's for our property and liability. To the transportation fund, a lot of folks think that transportation is self-funded with the fees that are charged. In fact, that's not the case. And then to the capital reserve fund for capital reserve projects such as boilers and roofs and that sort of thing. And then you can see the others. We look at expenditures by object. We see that about this next year, 82% of our total general fund budget will be salaries and benefits. Purchase services at 9%, supplies at 8%. It is a change this year. We have gone down in the percentage for salary and benefits, and that's primarily because, as we discussed before, of related costs for the modulars, as well as the conversion costs for Creekside Middle School. Instead of sorting our budget by object or by supplies, salaries, and benefits, if we look at how we spend our money in terms of function, our largest function obviously is direct instruction to students. You see that at 60% of our budget. The next part, we're going to go around, we're going to talk about in just a bit, is pupil support services at 6% of our budget, and that's specialized services for students. Instructional support is support for teachers at 5%. General administration is superintendent's office and related oversight and Board of Education oversight. School administration is just what you think it would be. It's principals and secretarial support out at the schools. Business services is business service office. Operations and maintenance, grounds, maintenance, utilities, security. Pupil transportation is obvious, and then central support services is technology, human resources, public information.
Would you mind going back to slide number 9?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just so the public's clear, Monument Academy, we are their chartering authority, but not their governing authority.
Yeah, I should talk a little bit about that, and
Okay.
Karen may want to add in on this a bit too. But yes, Monument Academy is chartered under state law and under the auspice of Lewis Palmer School District 38. However, state statute delineates in it the responsibilities of the Board of Education and then the responsibilities of the charter school Board of Education. And if you were to read state statute, you'd find that the oversight of the local school board over the Monument Academy School Board, or any charter school board for that matter, is limited to specific items, such as to ensure that they are in compliance with state law, to ensure that they follow through with state required statutes around curriculum and instruction. But in terms of a charter school's ability to enter into contracts, to buy land, to sell land, to issue debt, to appoint their executive director, to hire their teachers, to have their own policies within their employment requirements, to have their school calendar, to decide whether or not they want busing, to decide their hours of operation. All of that work is under the purview of that charter school board.
Thank you.
If I might add to that, except for financial reporting, they have their own audit.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own audit, but we're required to combine our financial reporting, theirs with ours, for our submission. That's why it's in this budget.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct.
And just to add, we are required to do the financial oversight for their budget, but that does not include, we have no authority over their Monument Building Corporation, which funds all of their capital purchases, because Monument Academy leases from the Monument Charter corporation. And so we also have no authority over their their building corporation.
Agreed. I was just trying to make this simple point,
Right.
that our relationship is driven through our charter
Yeah.
agreement, and it requires, the state requires, that their financial reporting is included with ours. It's not
Absolutely.
something that we dictate, it's a requirement.
Yeah, no,
With
Mr.
the exception of their separate entity that,
But
Yeah.
that, agreed.
They're what's called a component unit. And the reason that they are within our audit is because we are the large majority of their funder. We are required by state law to take the PPR and then fund it over to them. That's the requirement that Mr. Taylor is talking about. Are you good with that, Mr. Clausen?
I am,
Cheryl,
thank you.
I have a question on the next slide. The salary at 63% was a decrease. The benefits at 19%, was that an increase? Or is it stable? It's flat. Okay, thank you.
And that's because of the para increase and the 5.5% increase in health, dental, line.
Okay, thank you.
So we were talking.
I don't think your
I
microphone's
think we
on.
lost you.
Microphone.
Try pressing the button on the bottom.
So this next slide talks about the instructional spending at $30 million. And you'll see the $30 million in the lower right-hand corner on the slide below. And then we just break it out into its various areas. General elementary is 30% of that spending. You can see the programs going around. Special ed is another big expense there at 14%. It's just interesting to look at how we spend our dollars and how we spend our dollars over time. We talked about this slide before. This just gives you an ongoing look at deferred maintenance costs and concerns. I don't think there's any need to spend a lot of time on it unless someone has questions. And we really just hit the general fund. If you look in the budget narrative, you'll find a narrative of the minor funds, like the cap reserve fund, the insurance reserve fund, the food service fund, but that's really just too many numbers to give you at once. So that is an overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. That is, we had talked about several months ago of aligning our budgeting process and our reporting process with the CDE layout. And I know last time you had mentioned that the Bright bit, or what was
Bright Bites.
Bright Bites, thought we were too small to engage for some reason. But the question still remains, is this budget prepared to align with the CDE?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, if you look within the board packet, you'll see both our budget and Monument Academy's budget with that same, I'm trying to bring it up, and I think we may be able to here.
The same
With
format?
the same format that you all are seeing on a monthly basis. So yes, so you could start to, if you wanted to, in July, running comparisons.
Very good.
Okay.
The second question was, so this is really an interesting, thorough proposal and shows all of the detail. What I'm really curious about is, we had this increase of 4%, 4.4, whatever the number was. How much of that, what's the pie utilization of that increase? Have you done that analysis? So, for example, I heard that there's a 3% teacher increase. Well, if I saw the increase from the prior year budget for revenue, could you show me the pie of how that increase has been utilized?
So I think the best answer to your question, if I follow you, what you're saying, if we took just the increase and said this is where it goes, and there was a slide that I presented, I believe it was in the April meeting, where we had laid that out, so I could pull that up for you again. Just though the biggest piece of that is, as you said, compensation, and then showing what flows right to the site-based budget, school-based budget as it relates to that.
That's what I was recalling.
Yes.
That's what I was hopeful that we could see in the final presentation is, here's the incremental revenues, and then year over year, this is where those incremental increases have been spent.
Yeah, we can pull, I think we can pull that slide up and get it up so we can have it as a part of the budget.
That would
So
be
I don't
great.
think that would be hard to do.
Any additional questions for Ms. Wongman?
Actually, Chris, I have a question that Chris made me think. When we talk about the site-based budgeting, when it breaks down salaries, and then we talk about the salaries for staff, classified and unclassified, is that included in the site-based budgeting for each school, or is that separate?
It is included in the site-based budgeting for each school,
Okay.
but specifically with what the school pays for and what they don't. They pay for their general education teacher allotment. They pay for their secretarial staff and their custodial staff and that sort of thing. They do not pay out of their site-based allocation for special education, ESL needs. And when you think about the why not, is because some schools have centralized programs and some don't. A school can't really control how much staffing Rick needs to give them in a given year for special ed enrollment. So we pull that off the top and make sure we fund that for their school regardless of need, if you will.
But they have purview over if they need an additional fifth grade teacher or
Absolutely,
what their
yes.
administrative costs. And,
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain, just for those that may not know, the difference between classified and unclassified staff?
Sure. We have instructional staff or teachers, and then we have what we call classified staff. Another word for classified staff would be support staff. And they are folks that don't have a teaching certification or such as a classified aide, a teacher's aide, a lunchroom worker, a school secretary, a registrar at a school. Those folks would all be bus drivers. Those folks would all be within our classified ranks, educational support.
Thank you. And then one other question, I know I ask a lot. And I brought this up the last meeting, when we look at the difference in funding of our projections from us versus CDE, what time of year does that align?
So October 1 is the count date.
Right.
Then CDE is normally done with their adjustments about December 1st and line that out. Normally about that time, if you look out on the CDE website, you'll see a balance. You'll see where they've balanced out to our October 1 official count. It's December, January timeframe usually.
Okay.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Ms. Wongman? Thank you so much.
Matt, may I make a comment for Casey
Absolutely.
or Dr. Summers? So one of the things about the budget that we have just discussed this year, and I'm just wanting to give you a little bit of feel there, is aligning our budgeting and reporting with the same format, if you will, that the CDE uses, so that we're more comparable with our other school districts, et cetera. Now, we also have site-based budgeting, which we can do both, obviously. From a budgetary perspective, for me, you know, I go through that budget. I went through it in detail last year, but it's a lot of time and effort. And so I'm asking that in the future, we always look at the incremental changes, because I then don't have to go through the detail. It's kind of like, are we a policy-driven administration, or are we in the weeds, right? And I would like to be able to look at the budget and to be presented information that just shows me the deltas. Where are the significant changes that we need to be aware of that either continue with our stated policies or deviates? That's what we really need to see as a board. That's just an opinion of me, but I wanted to express it.
Thank you, and noted.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, anyone that is interested in signing up for the public comments regarding the budget hearing, I only have one name. Is there anyone that would like to add a name? Okay. Mr. Rahe, I believe you're first up. And if you'll just give me 1 second, let me get my stopwatch. Okay, please proceed.
I listened to the recording of last week's session. You're now spending $1.1 million on modulars, $1.1 million. Now, it's bad enough that most of this is to house a preschool program that we're not even obligated to pay for. What's even worse is that now you refuse to use existing space in Grace Best for it because you'd rather spend boatloads of money on modulars. Remember centralized pre-K? Back when you needed a list of reasons not to renovate Grace Best? Centralizing pre-K at Grace Best was repeatedly dangled in front of us as an alternative use for that school. Using Grace Best for centralized pre-K was a great throwaway line, and it sure looks that is exactly what you wanted it to be. The minute the bond fails, you realized you need to keep up the appearance of overcrowded schools. So you parade in the elementary principals here to say, parents want site-based pre-K and we think it's best. And just like that, centralized pre-K is out. And once again last week, we were told that you have to run this pre-K program for special ed kids. But your program doesn't need to be this big, and you all know it. Superintendent Broft admitted this last week. She was asked, what happens if the bond doesn't pass again? She told you, the district will have to reduce its pre-K program to make room for the additional students. Why didn't you reduce it after the bond failed when you were complaining about how costly these modulars were going to get? But there's more. We're also paying for modulars at the middle school, whose student population, according to your own demographers, is going to stay the same this year and then go down the year after that. Really? What was so urgent about getting these modulars that you couldn't wait for actual estimates? Your experts were in such a rush that the $700,000 estimate for 6 modulars has now gone to $1.1 million for just 5 modulars. That's almost an additional $500,000 that you never factored into any of your decisions because the experts were not even capable of getting realistic prices. So you made expensive decisions without all of the facts. Are these modulars a response to a legitimate need or just a way to show the community how wrong we were for voting down your bond? If you want this community to support teachers and students, let us do that by allowing us to vote for a bond to renovate Grace Best for half the cost. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the public hearing regarding the proposed 2019-20 budget. Okay. Scott Hayden, would you come forward, please? I'm sorry, Scott Hayden Morse. Come here. All right, Mr. Morse is going to go ahead and start us off tonight. So I need you to speak in the microphone and call the meeting to order. Just say, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
I would like to call this meeting to order.
And Ms. Namika, would you take a roll call? Take a roll call.
Would you please take a roll call?
Ms. Namika?
Mr. Clausen.
Here.
Mr. Poff.
Here.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Ms. Upchurch.
Here.
Excellent. Scott, if you want to now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Scott, tell us what school you go to.
I go to Lewis Palmer Middle School.
Okay, excellent. And what rank are you in the Boy Scouts?
I am first class currently.
Planning on getting your Eagle Scout?
Yes.
All right, well, thank you for being with us this evening and starting this off. You can have a seat, thank you. Per board policy BEDH, public participation at school board meetings, there is one time for public comment and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent upon the number of people who sign up, with the entire comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 or less people sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments will be available at 5 p.m. in the Learning Center meeting room. It's currently in the back if there's anyone that would like to sign up. All public speakers will be asked to limit their remarks to the time allotted based on the total number of speakers not to exceed 3 minutes per person. If a group of people have a similar concern, the board requests that a spokesman for that group be selected. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to the employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticism of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by the district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violated legal standards. Lastly, keep in mind we have K through 12 students in the audience. Please keep all comments appropriate for our audience. And to view the meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website, www.lewispalmer.org, on the Board of Education meeting page. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Plouffe.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
All right. We will now move forward to the public comment section of our meeting. All right, so there are 11 individuals that have signed up tonight, and if my math serves me correctly, that's 2 minutes and 45 seconds per speaker. Okay, Mr. Morris, we'll go ahead and start off with you. Thank you, Mr. Rahe. Okay, Mr. Morris?
If you're in opposition of Monument Academy's location, please join me up here.
And sir, if you'll just give me one moment, please.
Yep, you bet. No worries.
Okay, please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Mike Morris, and I'm speaking because the community would like for D38 to enact upon their responsibility under Colorado Title 22 and intervene to stop the building of Monument Academy High School at Highways 83 and 105. Specifically, we are asking for D38 to observe their responsibility, which states, all decisions regarding planning, siting, and inspection of charter school facilities is the responsibility of the Board of Education of the school district in which the land is located. You will find copies of Title 22 in the pamphlets that are being passed around. As a community, we are requesting this action to occur swiftly, as we have significant concerns regarding the traffic safety at the proposed location. I can assure you that I am not alone in these concerns, as my petition has been signed by approximately 1,000 local area residents. The petition was focused around the safety concerns that the proposed extensive building project will bring to a quiet, peaceful location. The community feels that the building of a school at the proposed location will cause a significant impact to the safety of the school children, severely affect motorists, impose restrictions on daily commutes, impact east-west traffic, and finally will cause bottlenecks should there be an emergency. Specifically, there is a fear amongst the community that the projected ingress and egress points aren't sufficient for a busy roadway like Highway 83, where motorists are consistently observed to maintain speeds of over 65 miles per hour. On a daily occurrence, this will cause commuters from the high school and Ymca to revert to driving through the local neighborhood. We are concerned that an influx of 3,392 new trips per day will invade our quiet streets and jeopardize the safety of the school children, the residents, and the kids of Wright-Kilmer. Furthermore, this has the potential to cause students and faculty to attempt to merge into traffic on the busy highway and will result in disaster. In fact, this exact situation occurred yesterday at this intersection and 2 vehicles collided head-on. When Monument Academy was confronted about this possibility at the public hearing, the answer was teens get in accidents all the time. If MA isn't worried about safety of the children, who is? Meanwhile, the projections do not account for high traffic that is redirected from I-25 or the new housing developments in Flying Horse North. Nor does it account for the east-west roadways, which are not large enough to handle traffic back and forth to I-25. The combination of these events will cause a backup on Walker Road, especially since local news redirects traffic along Highway 83 and 105. Finally, the proposed location could not be further positioned from the Monument Police Department. Based on posted speed signs along 105, it would take approximately 13 minutes for the Monument Police Station to drive to the school location. Recall, there are no decent spots for motorists on the road to pull over. I dread to think if there was an active shooter situation, what would be the outcome? According to the National Sheriff's Association, this average school shooting lasts 12.5 minutes, while the average police response time is 18 minutes. The importance of short notification times in these situations cannot be overstated.
Mr. Morris, I'm sorry, that's your time, sir.
In closing, I'd like to request a special meeting with the district.
Stephanie Colgate?
Hello, my name is Stephanie Colgate, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to the D38 board tonight. I'm here to represent many families who are concerned about the safety of not only Monument Academy students, but our neighborhood families and students of our local elementary school, Ray Kilmer. I have 3 students who attend Kilmer, and we live in the neighborhood. I would like to add to Mike's comments about traffic and safety of all concerned. Can I please share this budget for Monument Academy projected for the next 5 years? I'm concerned about the student safety at MA, as there is no security staff or police officer budget item listed in this financial plan for previous or future years. This brings concerns, as in the Highland Ranch STEM school shooting that took place just over a month ago on May 7th, there was no police officer assigned to the school. The entire neighborhood was placed on lockdown, and the ripple effect of that horrific incident was felt much further than just inside the walls of that school. How are we to protect our students in the greater neighborhood if the school isn't even concerned enough to protect those inside? There is also huge concern about the proposed YMCA that would be attached to the school with shared space. How will those entering the YMCA be screened? Will they be screened, or can anyone who's a YMCA member have open access? How are we going to protect those students inside the same building to ensure their safety from anyone wishing to do them harm? Our community is also concerned about the private trail system that is maintained by the HOA dues. These trails that are currently marked as private are now proposed to be connected to the YMCA, Monument Academy, and the broader Black Forest area, including Fox Run Park, opening up our neighborhood to outside people. Our neighborhood is a small, close-knit community. We know our neighbors and are committed to ensuring we are all safe. When someone is out of town, the rest of us help to keep an eye on their property. We know when unfamiliar cars are coming down the roads. This allows us to keep each other safe, and bringing the YMCA and the school will most certainly jeopardize this small community feel. We are also concerned about adding additional drivers and people to which emergency personnel will have to respond to an emergency situation. These roads in our area can be treacherous, as seen from recent fatal accidents, specifically the tragic death of the 2 teens in December. We don't need to add inexperienced drivers to poor driving conditions. This part of the district is known to have poor enough driving conditions that students were left stranded at Kilmer this past school year because the buses with experienced drivers were not able to safely get here to retrieve the students. As a 2013 Black Forest fire evacuee, I'm very concerned about adding additional traffic and congestion to an already difficult area to exit, especially in high traffic times. It took me and our 3- and 5-year-old boys at the time over an hour to get to the corner of 83 and 105, which is just over a mile from our home. This will only be compounded with additional traffic from a school and YMCA should another natural disaster occur. This would also be compounded by additional traffic trying to get into the neighborhood to get non-driving students out of the area, especially since no busing will be available for mass transport. I am asking you to grant a special meeting with the D38 board to dig deeper into our concerns. We are greatly concerned about the student, staff, and resident safety, and this project is jeopardizing them all.
Thank you, ma'am. That's your time. Alan Zindel?
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Alan Zindel. I'm a recent resident in the Walden community. As you know, in a narrow 3-2 vote, the El Paso County Planning Commission approved the proposed location of the new Monument Academy School on Friday, May 10th. Following the Planning Commission meeting, I had occasion to speak with Cole Emmons, who's the Senior Assistant Attorney for El Paso County, about decision-making authority within the county for new charter school sites. An email exchange occurred between us and following that conversation that I would like to share with you briefly. Tuesday morning following the Friday Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Emmons, we spoke on Friday regarding the County Planning Commission's approval last week of the location application for the proposed Monument Academy. While the Planning Commission voted 3-2 to approve the proposed location of the Monument Academy, there remains a question regarding the role of the District 38 school system as the sponsoring entity within the county by statute. And as such, the potential for District 38 School Board also have a say in the approval of the proposed site. I'm writing to see if you've had a chance to look into this question in the case of the Monument Academy per our discussion and provided definitive legal opinion. I also left a voicemail on your office phone regarding this matter, and I look forward to your response. Tuesday, May 14th, 3 minutes later. Alan, I'm in the middle of litigation that is due Thursday. I was not able to get to the research until last night. I'm in the process of conferring with Nina Ruiz, who's the County Planning Commission person who is responsible for this project. Later that day, 4:35 p.m., Alan, I spoke to Nina this afternoon. I'm going to send you some statutes in the morning. I need to highlight them for you, and then I will call you tomorrow. Wednesday, May 15th, 9:26 a.m., Alan, attached are 2 Colorado statutes that I believe indicate the Board of Education and the overseeing school district, not the board of the charter school, has the ultimate authority to make decisions as to the site selection of charter school sites. See the highlighted sections, and he sent me 2 documents that were highlighted and that I would like to submit to the board. I will plan to call you about 10 this morning, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss very quickly the summary of my conversation that followed with Mr. Emmons. The final decision on the school site rests with the sponsoring school district, in this case, County School District 38. Sponsoring school district can overturn decisions made by the County Planning Commission. The Charter School Board has no say in land use decisions and must comply with county statutes. And questions or concerns regarding the site must be put to District 38 School Board. So, in summary, this is not a NIMBY issue for our community. You've heard speakers talk about it, the safety of our children, and this is about the safety of our children, and in particular, our inexperienced teen drivers on dangerous roads in dangerous weather.
Thank you, sir.
For
That's
that
your
reason,
time.
I'm also requesting a special session of the board to discuss this matter in more detail. And I'd like to submit these documents.
Are there multiple copies for everyone or just one copy?
There are actually 2 copies.
Okay. So we'll get it down to Kathy.
Kathy, would you mind emailing these out to the board? Steve Gutman.
Good evening, board members. My name is Steve Gutman. I live in Woodhaven Drive in Walden near the proposed MA school site. I'm a retired community planner, and I thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time tonight to request that a special meeting of the D38 board be scheduled to consider overturning the decision of the County Planning Commission to approve the location for the proposed Monument Academy School. I base my request on the following. Review and approval processes for this public charter school deprive citizens of meaningful input and need to be changed by all approval authorities. The state requirement that schools are uses by right in residential zone districts has the effect that the county and local jurisdictions are only able to rubber stamp a public charter school's location regardless of where the school is proposed to be located near student populations where it could relieve pressure on existing schools. Unclear state and county statutes related to the development of public charter schools and different processes for project review before and after location approval together make the overall process appear to citizens to be a giant game of kick the can and let another entity take responsibility for the decision. And I could go through a number of ways in which these statutes are very unclear in terms of the process. Was safety a huge consideration for the site? Why was the approval process rushed? D38 has a responsibility and accountability for the consequences of allowing a large school like MA without busing to be relocated miles away from its student base on some of the most dangerous roads in the county. Sale of the site by D38 was conditional on the buyer developing a school there despite D38 having previously determined that the site was wrong for a school for many reasons, many sound reasons. The rest of the story is that the school envisioned by D38 some 24 years ago was for a small small neighborhood middle school to be the companion for a lovely neighborhood Ray Kilmer Elementary School. A 1,000 student behemoth was never envisioned or intended for our rural area. This did not prevent the MA's Academy from claiming that the MA site should be approved because it was always meant for a school. With no opportunity for us to rebut this, it is likely that this half-truth added weight to the MA's request for site approval, site location approval by the County Planning Commission. D38 should require that the site location approval process for charter schools provide opportunity for citizen input regardless of state requirements. The county's hearing notices posted on the property were the first notices most residents had that the County Planning Commission hearing would be their one and only opportunity for input. And it was explained to us that the statutes didn't require it, so therefore, you're on your own neighborhood. However, there is no county mechanism for neighborhood participation in any land use review process by a citizen monitoring and review organization other than a county designated review agency associated with a master plan or a small area plan.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's your time.
Okay, thank you.
David Conway?
Good evening. My name is David Conway. I'm going to talk about taxes, not just the Monument Academy or D38 taxes, but the big picture of taxes. It is clear Monument Academy represents a significant fiscal commitment. It draws fundings off tax dollars in 4 ways, and I know some of this will be redundant with what was previously said. Primarily, there's PPR. There's also Colorado Charter Schools program. There's mill levy override, and there's a state grant for capital construction. Do charter schools represent taxation without representation? Absolutely yes, if the process isn't transparent and doesn't include the community, which is ultimately paying the bills. It's everybody in here. And it's especially aggravating when the district's on the path to build unnecessary schools. If we go with Monument Academy, we're putting a middle school in a location that's not needed. The current high schools are not at full capacity, don't need another high school. Financially, the taxpayer is being squeezed. I talked about the bigger picture. I mentioned mill levy override. I mentioned the ballot initiative. We also have, from a taxpayer perspective, I got community highways that are or roads that are in terrible shape. County Highway 83, State Highway 83. It's going to have to be expanded. The county itself estimates 17% growth in this year, which is going to add to the traffic. That came from the county, our county administrator, who spoke to us on May 22nd. We've also know our taxes are going up because we spoke to the county assessor. And that is not speculation, that is a certainty. Our property assessment values are going up and we're all gonna feel it. There's only so many dollars in the checkbook. So when balancing the county priorities, which includes the schools, public safety, highways, and the growth in northern El Paso County, Monument Academy falls below the cut line. I'm a program manager, I support government programs. Things frequently fall below the cut line. You can't do everything. Here's an interesting correlation. A petition against Monument Academy has been signed by approximately 1,000 citizens qualified to vote. Those 1,000 signers only considered the merits of Monument Academy. The tax implications and county imperatives at large were not highlighted in the petition. Additionally, hundreds of residents wrote emails very much anti-Monument Academy. You've got copies of them that have been provided to you. I expect the number of residents against the increase in taxes and Monument Academy expansion and any new ballot initiatives, they're not going to understand that there are separate funding sources. But any new ballot initiatives, the opposition will skyrocket when they look into and understand the overall tax picture. You can count on that. I'm very much pro-school. Kilmer Elementary was mentioned earlier. I live in that neighborhood. I've been there 9 years. It is a wonderful school. We support it, everything about it. But it's the right school in the right place. What we're asking is that taxpayer...
Sir, I'm sorry, that's your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gary Gable?
Good evening. As I conclude my 31 years in public education, 18 of those have been in Lewis Palmer School District. And I want to thank the school board and the previous school boards for your time and energy. I know that it's a thankless job and you don't get a lot of recognition for the time and energy you put in there. So I want to make sure you're recognized. I also like to take this opportunity to recognize the central administration. Karen Broth, Bob Foster, Cheryl Wangerman, Lori Benton, Dennis Coates, and others that are not here. The reason I'd like to speak to you, besides I want to make sure that I come across very thankful and appreciative for the time and years that I've had in the Lewis Palmer School District. Has meant a lot to me, and this is a great and special place. But I feel compelled to talk to you tonight about some issues that may not be popular, but I can tell you from my experience, I'm seeing a difference. There is a true teacher shortage in the United States, and currently, right now, I'm seeing it more challenging and difficult to find quality people. I look to the north at Douglas County, I look to the south at Air Academy, and they're consistently passing mill levies and funding their teachers to continue to keep their property values up because they have quality education. I will give you an example of Douglas County just passed a bond, and it helped with mental health support, and it helped the counseling load. I have a very strong counseling team, and I lost one of my counselors who was recruited by that school at Douglas County and targeted this person. And money was a factor, but the biggest factor that we are losing are resources. The caseload my current counselors have are approximately 400. They went up to, they will go to Douglas County where the caseload is 250. They also have resources with full-time psychs, full-time social workers, and mental health support. We don't have that. We're looking at a potential 3% increase for our teachers. And that's great, except we're so far behind where other districts are 5%. So we continually fall behind. And I know that there's a lot of, obviously, opposition and concern with taxes, but I'm gonna tell you, from my perspective, I had a teacher today that resigned, one of my outstanding math teachers, had 15 years experience. And the reason they left is they took a job that's gonna pay the same and have a lot less stress. So I guess my purpose is twofold tonight. One, to make sure that you understand how appreciative I am for the community, for the district, allowing me to spend 18 of 31 years of my career at Palmer Ridge and open up the high school. But things are changing, and in the past we were able to have teachers come to Palmer Ridge or come to the district because they dealt with a different type of student and they had smaller class size. Those days are no longer here. They're going away. So I know there's a lot of different...
Mr. Gable, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's your time.
Okay, thank you
And
for
Mr.
that.
Gable? And Mr. Gable, thank you for your service to our district. We appreciate it.
I think I'm next.
Sean Harry?
Heary.
Heary. Apologize for mispronouncing that,
Tough
sir.
act to follow. But. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me put my glasses on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Heary, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps retired. I'm also the president of my homeowners association, Hawk Ridge West, which sits on the southeast corner of 83 and County Line Road. I've lived in Monument and unincorporated Colorado Springs for 14 years, the past 12 consecutively. My 4 children attended one District 38 elementary school, 2 middle schools, and all 4 attended Monument Academy at different times. All 4 of my children attended St. Mary's High School because my children and I desired a faith-based education for them. Our eldest daughter is a third-year medical student at CU. Our second daughter just graduated NYU Law. Our son just graduated Villanova University, is now a naval officer, and our youngest is a sophomore at Villanova. We are very proud to live in District 38. We're proud of the high schools. And we have supported all the mill levy override initiatives that have come our way despite having kids at a Catholic high school. I believe that well-funded schools help maintain my property values, and I am prepared to support the current ballot initiative this fall to fund and construct a new elementary school. After my retirement from the Marine Corps, I began teaching Marine Corps Junior RTC, 60 miles north of here in Adams County. Just completed 11th year. I'm also a licensed principal. I believe I have a firm understanding of public education and the challenges every district faces in funding new construction. My basic understanding of the way this works is you have to gain public support for your efforts, and we as taxpayers are protected from all the good intentions of well-meaning politicians as they try to spend our money. You see, I am a fan of Monument Academy. During their attendance at the school, my children received a first-rate education. My son Matthew saw so much of his math teacher, Miss Cromer, that he wants to send her his graduation announcement as a math major. He even completed his Eagle Scout project on Monument Academy grounds. However, the plans to build Monument Academy High School adjacent to the intersection of 83 and 105 have clearly awoken a sleeping giant. You see, I'm not the only one who is concerned by this decision, what appears to be a sweetheart deal for a Monument Academy insider. I don't know all the deals, I don't know all the details. I'm coming in at the 9th inning. But I will point out a few things. On Sheriff Elder's site, he points out that El Paso County has led the state in traffic deaths in 2017 and 18. We certainly have suffered tragedies in our local community. He's going to increase his traffic enforcement. The two areas he cited in the northern part of the county, Highway 105 between Interstate 25 and Highway 83, and Highway 83 between County Line to Shoup Road. When my kids drove home from St. Mary's at night, I said, get on the interstate and take County Line Road. State Highway 83 is extremely, extremely dangerous.
Thank you.
Heck, I drive on it, right?
Thank you, sir. That's your time.
Yep, thank you.
Bill Anderson, I apologize if I mispronounced that. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bill Anderson. I'm here because I support our effort to pass a bond this fall and build a new school. And I have concerns because of the recent failures of bonds and MLOs in this district. We had a lot of positive response from the board on this flyer that came out, and I had two problems with it. The first one is the front cover says, we're on a great path. And you can help D38 students if you want to. Doesn't really matter is how I read it. It didn't come across as a sense of urgency, like this is something we need. I would have rather read, we need your help to stay on this current path of excellence that we're on. On page 3, it said one of those little start items, hey, don't worry, the bond will cause little or no tax increase. And that's when I say, well, there you lost your credibility again. If it's little or no tax increase, why do you have to ask for a bond? So those are the two problems I had with that flyer. Here's where I think you should go with the next piece of communication with our community. Go ahead and put it out there that we need this and have a sense of urgency associated with your communication. Back in '99, when we moved here, we passed a bond, and the bond for the school district included a bone that we threw to the seniors of this community. We're going to throw some money at the Woodmore Barnes Senior Center, and that was included in that bond. So I was going to suggest you try to come up with another bone that you can get these seniors to get behind your bond, if it's something that you can look into. I don't think it would be very hard. Explain in your next communications the relationship between this D38 and this Monument Academy. How do they get to just decide and announce in the Tribune that they've got a site and they're going to start digging and building a school? They didn't ask me for any of my tax money. Are they just giving it to you? Are you just giving my money to that school? They don't have any accountability to me or as a taxpayer. So that needs to be explained, because me, and not just me, my neighbors, we talk about it going, what's going on? And if they're going to put in 300 desks for a middle school, why do we need to have another middle school? Forget it. And it goes to that credibility issue. I don't want to point fingers. It's not whose credibility issue is, or who caused it, or when it happened. The point is, there's a lack of trust and credibility between your communication and the community. Solve that, and without pointing any fingers, just say, we need your help, this is why we need it, and get on with it. Thanks very much for your time.
Just Neil?
Hello, my name's Jess Neal. I'm a resident of Walden.
Sir, would you mind maybe moving the microphone up? I just want to make sure everyone could hear you.
My name's Jess Neal. I'm a resident of Walden, longtime resident, 28 years. One of the things I wanted to mention here, the group that's before you that's against this school is an extremely small percentage of the people. Because the word's not out that these meetings happen, and it came out very late. I think if you talk with a lot of the people between here and there, Bentry, all that stuff, you're going to find the same thing. There's a lot of people against having to put up with traffic going up that hill and putting kids going up that hill in the winter. Please hold a special meeting to talk about this.
And our last speaker is Tom Ryan.
Good evening, I'm Tom Ryan, live in Kings Deer, for a point of reference. I want to highlight a couple of key issues with regard to the Monument Academy location. And the first one is that one of the things that none of us the first one is, if you look at the people that showed up here tonight, I don't know what your experience is about what your turnout is normally from the public to attend a meeting like this. But I do know back when the El Paso County Planning Group held their meeting, the guy made a comment that they were having to open the dividers in the back of the room for the first time in his entire tenure. There were so many people that showed up specifically to argue against Monument Academy's location. So the number of people here, as the prior gentleman just said, it's a tip of the iceberg in terms of how many people truly oppose this. The second thing I want to bring up is one of the key points that I and others just couldn't understand with regard to the Planning Commission's approval was that one of the things that the Monument Academy plan said is that yes, there will be an increased load in traffic, but the county already has plans to improve 105, so we don't need to worry about that. The problem is that the timelines don't line up. The school is going to likely be completed in 2020 or open in 2020. That last stretch of 105, now remember I live in Kings Deer, so the stretch from Archers up to Roller Coaster and then down, especially that intersection at Roller Coaster, that won't even be touched until 2035. You got 15 years of school traffic. Furthermore, when you now look at Monument Academy where it is right now, by the way, I have 4 grandchildren in Monument Academy right now, and I still oppose the location of this high school as strenuously as I possibly can. For one reason, both of my kids will have students in both Monument Academy and the new high school if it opens. The amount of traffic going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth over that 6-mile stretch of road is going to make commutes absolutely horrendous. So those are my points. I mean, the traffic studies are not right. You've got an incredible amount of people. And then the last thing I'll throw out is that I used to be involved in politics at the Colorado state level and met a lot with the legislators up there. One of the things they always told me is that the only thing that will cause a legislature or a board member, or whether it's a school board or anything, is fear. And I look at this and I go, you guys have to get mill levies approved. If the District 38 school board does not step in and stop this Monument Academy issue, you've got thousands and thousands of people in this district that are going to be angry with the school board at a time when you need their support to push through some of the projects you want to get done. That's it. Thank you.
Now moving on to board member comments. Mr. Poff, can we start with you, sir?
Absolutely. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but I think it deserves deserves it tonight, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try, I wrote down some notes, you saw me probably writing through all of that, and I think some of these things need to be answered. And so I'm the longest serving board member. I was on the board when Monument Academy built their first school on Highway 105. So I want to address that legacy as well, because I think it's important that our community understands how that relationship works with the charter school. So I'm going to try to do this, and if you don't like what I say, I'm not running again anyway because of term limits, so you'll have to put up with me for 4 more months. This is my understanding. Back when Monument Academy built their current campus on Highway 105, at the time, I was a detective with the sheriff's office. And I use this term, my wife hates it, that my head explodes. When I looked at that location, the first thing I thought about, I live basically at Furrow and 105, is basically the area that I work in. So every day, I come down that 105 hill, if you want to call it that. And during the winter, it's a challenge to get up that little hill. We all know where it's at. And my statement at the time was, that's about the worst location they could have picked for safety, is putting it on Highway 105 with a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Monument Academy never asked District 38 what we thought of their location. It never happened. Because if they'd asked me, I'd have been very clear, pick wiser. In fact, I believe at the time that I was told, they had already purchased the land. So I get that you're handing these out, and I appreciate this. It's my understanding, and obviously we need to clarify this, we as District 38 School Board cannot tell a charter school where they can and can't build. It's their decision. Now, if we're wrong on that, I wish we would have known about it back then, because I would have been opposed to that because of safety concerns. I voted no to sell the land. So I would tell you from my standpoint, there's a lot of conflicting things that are going on. Back in 2006, and this is before I came on the board, we were looking at a site to build a second high school. This is before me, so I don't know all the ins and outs. This is for Palmer Ridge. My understanding, and I could be wrong on this, that land was looked at. And it was eliminated as a possibility due to lack of water and other concerns, the location. So it was not considered. Then it was Whistler's Ranch. We know how that went. And then it ended up where it is today, which I think was actually a great location. It's a great school. It's a school we needed. So my understanding, and I want to be clear on this, because if we're wrong, we never voted on a location. We never voted to allow Monument Academy to build in that location. We voted to sell land to a local developer. That's what we did. So understand that. I want to correct a couple things, and I think these statements were made in haste. Some of the speakers said that they are against that school or against Monument Academy. I think, and my interpretation is you're not against the charter school. I am very pro-charter. You're against that location. So I would be very clear in the future to just, and this is just my recommendation, I'd be very clear that it's the location that you have concerns with, not the charter school. I want to be very clear that the addition of the charter school is not going to add any middle school seats. So if there's that statement, here's the deal. They're going to add X number of middle school seats out at 83 and 105. They're taking them away from the 105 location. Building that charter school will not add one seat to the capacity issues where we have it in the district. It's not going to help. It's that simple. Also to understand with charter schools, with a public school, they're both public, but public of choice, we tell you where your kid's school is. You can either choose to come to that school or you can take your child someplace else. That's how it works in public education. We cannot tell anybody in this community, your home school is a charter school. That's not how it works. It sounds like there's a group that's not real happy with the location, so they can build this, and that's their decision, but we can't really put this into our capacity planning. And some of the individuals who spoke said there could be a direct correlation. I'm telling you as a board member, having been on this board for 12 years and been through a recession on this board, we need to go back to 2 middle schools. We need to build that elementary school right next to where Creekside was, and we need to convert that middle school. If we don't do that, get used to modulars, because that's what's coming. And guess how we're going to pay for the modulars? We're going to do it through PPR. And if you understand how the system works, that's money that should have been spent on your kids. That's how bonds work. We ask the community to chip in money so we don't have to steal from Peter to pay Paul. That's how it works. So I'm very concerned when someone gets to the microphone and says, if you allow this to happen, we're not going to support your bond. All you're going to hurt is the kids. You're not going to hurt me. My kids have been through this great system, K through 12. My kids are both in college, and it's all because of the great teachers in this district. If the community wants to let this district go to pot, that's your right as a community to do that. You can be mad because a charter school is going to build out in your location, and you can take it out on the kids. You can do it. You can vote no this fall, and all you're going to affect is a bunch of kids and our teachers that are doing a wonderful job. So I would encourage you to not do that. But I want to make sure that I handle all these things. The land out there originally, and I've actually done a little research, it was originally looked at for a possible middle school location. I don't think it was ever really looked at for a high school. In fact, it was looked at a high school and rejected. So I will tell you that. I just want to make this clear. District 38 was never asked if it was okay if they built a charter school there. Never happened. My understanding is they don't have to ask. That's their business. If I'm wrong, then I would love for this to come back and let's take a vote. I would have liked to have gone back and voted on the school before. Understand that they are chartered through us, but they don't have to. They could charter through the state and basically do whatever they want within our district. So understand that. Also understand there was one question that was asked. How can they just go out and say that they're going to build a school without asking the voters for a bond initiative? So they're going to go out and build a school, and the bottom line is they don't have to. The way the state is set up right now, you have no tax representation when it comes to the charter schools in the state of Colorado. They can burden your taxes, and you have zero representation. That's how it works in the state of Colorado. That needs to be fixed. It's your tax dollars. You should have the right as a community to say whether you give it to them or not. There should be a vote. With charter schools, there is no vote. Now, someone had mentioned, about the advertising in that 8-page brochure, if you want to call it that everybody received. I love that handout, if you want to call it that, because it's true transparency. It's us going to every community member. Since I've been on the board, our biggest issue has always been, how do we get information to the 70% that don't have kids in our district? I can hit the 30%, send it home with the kids, right? Send an email. We have your email addresses. What about the 70% of the retirees? We want to keep them informed, which is what I think the one individual was with this. Understand when you see that quote in there, little or no tax increase, understand very clearly as we grow, more people chip into the pie and your taxes creep down. So when we're talking about this bond, what we're saying is if you will allow us to keep the taxes the same, because we have a lot of people on fixed income in this community, retirees. Their main concern when they looked at any bond initiative, how much are my taxes going to go up? We're trying to structure the bond for this new school at such that when it would naturally go down, we just want to keep it the same. So it's true that if you voted no, your taxes will go down. It is true that if you vote on the bond, your taxes will increase, or there will be a tax addition, but we've got a structure, and if you stick around, we're going to talk about this a little later on. We're going to try to make this that as these natural drop-offs when the taxes would be, we're just going to keep it level. So your taxes won't go down, but they won't go up, and we can pay for a new school. Because we know that a lot of community members are motivated by what is the bottom line for me. And what we're trying to do is not increase your taxes and build a school. If you're confused, call me. My phone number is on the website. I will explain it further. Stick around for a break or after the meeting and I'll explain a little bit better. I agree 100% as a retired cop. I've had to tell parents that their kids are no longer amongst us. That's one of the bad sides of being a detective. On numerous times, I had to tell loved ones that their spouses are gone, and I've had to tell parents that their kids are not coming home. It's the worst part of being a cop. I personally would not support putting any type of school on a major road. Look at where Palmer Ridge is. I mean, Lewis Palmer to me is kind of almost, but it's still, these are smaller roads, but as the community grows, we need to make sure that things are safe. I personally would not support putting a school out there, but it's not my decision. So I hope that I answered most of the questions. I do have one lingering question myself, which is, if the school board, D38 school board, does have the authority to have a yes or no vote on a location, I didn't get that last time, and I don't see that we had it this time. We sold land to a developer. That's what happened. So I apologize for being verbose. In 4 months, you won't have to worry about it again. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Poff. Mr. Taylor?
Well, due to the interest that I've heard as well, I want to make just a couple of comments to echo what Mark said, but also just to clarify a couple of my thoughts. One is, when we voted to sell the land to the local developer, there was a stipulation that said that developer would contribute land to Monument Academy. So in a sense, we did vote as a board to sell the property with the stipulation that that developer would contribute land to MA. So that's just a clarifying point. Casey, I want to address this to you. I think Mark's point about communications is a good one. It's a great one, in fact. I didn't know what was going on in the school board for the first 15 years I lived here either, because I didn't come to these meetings. I read what I read in the Gazette or OCN, but I didn't have any idea of most of the dealings within the school district until I was elected to serve as a board member. What I've learned over the last 2 years is a tremendous amount about school systems. I've also learned very detailed conversations have occurred between Lewis Palmer School District and Monument Academy. We rewrote their charter last year. We approved their high school almost 2 years ago. We've monitored their progress. The district, as you all heard, is growing at a 17% clip. We need schools. I personally am a proponent of choice. Choice into our district, choice out of our district, choice within our district. I think that's an important value that I support. And I'll just add that there's been a lot of conversations, and this, Casey, is I guess for you, is that more than a year ago, we were having conversations with Monument Academy's board and our board representatives, and we talked about location, location, location. We suggested that they might consider what someone mentioned earlier, Grace Best, as an alternative. And we made that very clear that we'd be happy to work with them on Grace Best as an alternative. In fact, it's oft times that school boards will sell older property to charter schools. It's a common practice. So that offer has been made and rejected. So, and again, I was the one, Matt, you'll recall, I said the three most important things is location, location, location. However, they chose not to do that. So they continued to pursue what has occurred. And for the most part, everything that occurred, I agree with most of what Mark has said. You know, I've come to really understand that when you're serving in a public position, it is a little bit thankless, but I've also come to appreciate the diversity of opinion is so valuable because it really does inform people on how to make their decisions. My point about this issue of location for the Monument Academy High School is that there's been a lot of public comments. There's been a lot of public debates. My good friend Mark and I have had serious conflicts publicly about this whole issue. So I heard someone say that all of a sudden this has happened, but for me, sitting here, it's been going on for 2 years. So I'm a little surprised that all of a sudden there's an uproar. Now, I'm not blaming anyone. I don't want to even make you think that I'm saying that. I'm just saying, how do we get this information out to the public better so that this doesn't happen? Because I don't think it's right that at this point in time we have this conversation. This should have been going on for the last 2 years. And it hasn't been that I'm aware of. I mean, we've had our conversations, we've had public debates about it, but this is the first time I've heard anyone from the community say, we don't like this. And I don't know what else to do other than how can we improve our communication process so that it doesn't happen last minute kind of feel. I think the 11th hour comment is appropriate here. So that aside, I take the concerns seriously. And I don't know for sure what we can and can't do about it. I do know we have legal representation that's guided us through the whole process, and we will probably continue to seek that legal guidance to determine what, if anything, can be done. But as far as I understand, it's kind of a done deal. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's my understanding, and I'm sure we'll have review of it. I wanted to add, though, this is Karen Broff's last formal board meeting after 5 years of service. And I believe, even though I've only worked with her for 2 years, I think she's leaving our school district better than she found it. I think there's been a lot of good things that have occurred under her leadership, and I thank her publicly for all that she's done. Her commitment to children and the education process is unquestionably number one. And Casey, at the same time, this is your last chance to sit in as a to-be, as a spectator. But we welcome you, and we look forward to working with you and address all of the issues of our community. And I'm grateful, again, for the graduation that I was able to attend. There is no better reward than to shake a senior's hand and hand them their certificate to see the joy. And there wasn't one that came across there unhappy. I saw a lot of joy that day, and I will never forget that experience. So all of the things that we deal with in terms of decision-making and so forth, it's all secondary when you get to have that chance to see an 18-year-old with joy in their eyes as they're graduated from high school. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Phillips?
To start off, I'd just like to thank everybody who made public comments and who came in person. I think it's very helpful for all of us up here and as a board to hear the different perspectives and sometimes to be informed on a point that we might not have thought about otherwise. And I would just, with regard to all that was said and commented on, I think we just need to consider as a board if there are any legal issues we may have overlooked, and check into that just to make sure we've done our due diligence. I came on the board a year ago, almost exactly, and so much of what has occurred, like Chris and Mark said, decisions were made before I was on the board, and so I can't speak specifically to a lot of the history. But I did have some other comments in different veins I wanted to make tonight as well. In May, we all attended a lot of continuations and graduations. They were celebratory and at times really beyond words to see children and graduates so happy and excited and to see the family support that they were receiving. And it was also very personal for me as well, as our family had a senior graduate from Lewis Palmer High School this year. It's the ultimate reason we're all here. We're helping to create strong citizens who will secure a better world. And Karen, since this is your last meeting, I just wanted to say that you have been at the lead of this the last number of years. And
I only knew you from the parent perspective for the first 4 years you were here, but having worked with you the last year, I just want to thank you for your guidance and your leadership for the entire district. As it all begins in elementary school and preschool and in kindergarten, in fact, our children are supported by all of us along the way, by the teachers, of course, support staff, counseling departments, gifted and talented special education staff, nutrition services, transportation, maintenance, administrators, and the list goes on. And so it occurred to me while being at the graduations and the continuations that one child walks across the stage, but behind them was a whole group of our community that supported them along the way. A dollar sign is one measure of what we invest in a student, but what the employees of this school district provide for our children, coupled with the care of our many families, is truly special and inspiring. And our students are launching out into the greater world quite successfully. It is a season to feel good about those accomplishments and to look forward, knowing that we still have work to do, and we always will have work to do, to continue to grow and improve. I wanted to mention that Dr. Summers and I were at the CASB legislative wrap-up. There is continuing ongoing discussion at the state level, and many, many people are thinking through and bringing ideas to the table to address Colorado education funding issues. It is quite a tangle, and it's not going to be fixed quickly. I don't have anything specific to say with regard to that. Maybe Dr. Summers does, but that was my quick takeaway from that one. I have, as I mentioned, I've been on the board for 1 year now, and I have been really impressed with the community engagement across a number of lines. Our administration has continued to connect in really meaningful ways with local businesses and organizations, and 2 of those ways I can speak to personally, just because I was at meetings in person the last month or so. The Business Advisory Council meeting was well attended, and I was glad I just happened again upon Dr. Summers, who happened to be there and has been really engaged so far in his transition. But it was really good for the businesses in the local area, leaders of local businesses, to see you there and to hear from you. Also, there is a social emotional wellness coalition that has begun in earnest, having met twice this spring, and will be continuing their mission to coalesce efforts to support our students who may be in crisis or need continuing social emotional support of any kind. This is an effort to weave together efforts from a number of different community corners, such that we as a whole community are most effective in supporting each and every one of our students. I'd like to thank those of you who have worked diligently and very thoroughly on the budget. It's been very, very helpful the last couple of meetings, all of the materials you've provided and the presentations. Again, I think I have that perspective of having been a newer board member, but like you said, it takes time to get through the whole budget, and your explanation's really helpful. I'd also like to thank those who have been working on the website with regard to information for the possible 2019 bond. For those of you who may not know, on the LPSD on the lewispalmer.org website, there is a 2019 bond tab, and it now has a wealth of information that you can click on. They are titled, and they are also by icon. It's very easy to navigate, and I think the more that we can help our community navigate to that site and share that information, it will be helpful in terms of funding education and funding our local schools. I am looking forward to the fall, and since I have been the point person for Lewis Palmer Middle School tours, I just wanted to let others know that Mr. O'Connor and I have already talked about additional tours, and we will begin those again as soon as this school year gets rolling in August. And finally, I wanted to comment that for teachers and others in our community that I have heard from regarding compensation and budget constraints, please know that we are listening and we appreciate your emails. As I said last month, we need to keep this conversation current among all of us as board members, and to advocate for a robust district that can compensate its teachers and staff well and in such a way that it reflects our community values as a whole. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Ms. Upchurch?
Thank you, Matt. I also wanted to congratulate our seniors. Last year was my first time being able to be on a different perspective on graduation, and so this was my second year, and I look forward to it every year now. And I congratulate one of our seniors that just graduated. I took such pride in being able to shake his hand, and I concur that seeing that pride and that joy in those students and in those parents, there's just, I can't explain it except the pride and joy that comes from that. And it brings pride and joy knowing that our teachers and our staff and our parents and our community are why those students will go on and succeed. And something that was pointed out in the budget book is that D38 has one of the lowest remediation rates in the state. And that is a testament to our community and our educators. So congratulations again. Also, I wanted to point out and say that the numbers that were in front of us don't go unnoticed. And I commend everyone that advocates. Everyone has their different perspectives and their different ideas of how things should go, or what should we do, or how can we solve these problems. And when we all come together in collaboration as a community and we work through these and we look for those positive solutions, that's where we see great things happen. Our various departments in our school district is a prime example. That budget process is a long process, and all of our departments come together and they work together in symphony to talk about what are our priorities and how can we make sure that we're putting our students first, and how can we make sure that we are addressing the needs of our staff and our teachers. And so this isn't just a one-man show. This is everybody working together. It is our educators, it is our staff, it is our administrators, it is our CFO and our superintendent and the board. And when we come together, it's not, I personally would have loved to see us meet that 4.4%, but I also recognize that when you're going through and you're prioritizing and you're looking at what can we do to make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs in the best way that we can, and we're doing the best job we can. And we shouldn't rest on our laurels, so we continue to push forward and do what we can. And one of the ways that our community can get involved is through DAC and through our backs and through being here at board meetings, because I concur with Chris that before I was a board member, I knew that that space was up for sale. I saw that land back as a parent driving back and forth. So what is a solution? What is a positive way to move forward to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our students and addressing our community? And what is a positive solution forward on how can we as a community work together to make sure that we are indeed respecting our community members and indeed respecting our partnership and the choice that we have in Colorado and here in our district, and moving forward in a positive direction. I also wanted to point out that we're going to be discussing legislation and the effects of the past legislation at the August meeting, but something that we might want to keep on the back of our minds is there is going to be, one of the things that came out of the legislation this year was that there is going to be a ballot initiative, statewide ballot initiative, kind of a debrucing ballot initiative. So to keep that in mind, and in August is when we'll discuss the things that did come out of the legislation. How does it affect us? How does it affect our kids? How does it affect our teachers? And what are we doing to make sure that we are representing the values of our students in our community and our education system here in D38? And I think that's also a good time for us to start talking about being positive advocates at our Colorado Association School Board, Colorado Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly, which is in October. So that would be an opportunity to start coming together, and when we're looking at resolutions to bring forward as advocates for education here in D38, what is it when we want to see, how do we want to see the state move? When other school districts are bringing resolutions forward, that's our opportunity to discuss and say we do or we don't disagree with this resolution, or come up with our own resolution. So I'd like to see us work on that August up until October Delegate Assembly. And speaking of working as a community, one of the things I am excited about is that we are already going to start our meetings for our ad hoc committee to look at studying start times for our school district. And That meeting will be meeting this week, as a matter of fact. And that was another good example of parents coming together in advocacy for something that they believed in a positive way and shining light in a positive manner with a plan going forward, with showing us here's a timeline, here's a work study, here's information, and being able to use that as a springboard to look at making sure that we're partnering with our community and respecting our students and our teachers. And I guess that's all I have. And happy summer. Sorry, it's not all I have.
Thank you,
I hope
Miss.
everybody enjoys the rest of their summer, and thank you, Karen and Cheryl, and thank you for being here again.
Thank you. I want to thank my fellow board members. This is an unpaid position, and each one of my fellow board members spend dozens of hours each month serving you and our children. I think if you asked everyone on this board why they're on here, and they would say it's all about the kids. You know, we're here to do what's best for our kids. A lot of wonderful comments tonight. Appreciate all the public comments that I heard. As I heard them, one question that I had to myself, ask myself is what we could do better to inform you. You know, I sincerely appreciated everything that we heard tonight, but as one board member, I would have loved to have heard it many, many months ago. And your concerns are my concerns. I live in the same area that the majority of you do. I drive through that same intersection that probably each one of you do multiple times a day. I have a teenage driver that does it as well. So your concerns are not going unheard. There is a question regarding what, if any, action this board could take, and that's a question that I will do my best to determine if there's a viable option to pursue. But with that being said, I also want to thank all of our teachers, administrators, and the rest of the team from District 38. Much like many of my fellow board members, I was able to attend 3 continuations and 2 graduations in the 48-hour period of time. And it's great seeing, you know, kids either finishing up in elementary school, junior high, or high school. And, you know, District 38 is one of the highest performing districts in the state. But we also need to keep in mind that we're losing a lot of good teachers. You know, compensation is one issue, but Ms. Phillips referenced, you know, these tours at Lewis Palmer Middle School. If you haven't been there, I challenge you to go. You know, these teachers are giving up their lounge. The principal gave up his office to accommodate the growth of these students. And so these portables, they're already filled before the next school year starts. So, you know, growth is off the chart, and anyone that drives around Monument Academy that doesn't, or excuse me, Monument, and doesn't say that there's growth, you know, they're really not paying much attention to all the growth that we're seeing. I want to thank Karen as well. Karen, to some degree, was my mentor. I was appointed to this board several years ago, and even before that, Karen was a friend, and one of the reasons why I decided to get involved in the school board was her love and passion for our students and our districts. And she's been a great example to us. I joke with her that I have 3 kids in this district. My youngest will be a 5th grader this year. And I kept on telling Karen I'm not gonna let her retire until my Madison graduates, but unfortunately we didn't quite make it that far. Casey, we're excited to have you on board. And then Cheryl, we're losing you as well. Cheryl's been with the district for over 20 years, has done, you know, many great things, but we're also excited for the new and next chapter in her life. So with that being said, we'll turn a few minutes back to Mr. Poff.
All right. Just kind of relax a little bit, if you might. We kind of get that business public comments out of the way, so we need to have a little fun now. I'm not going to ask you to do jumping jacks or anything like that. But you probably wondered, I didn't say anything about Karen or Cheryl during my board comments. That was intentional because it's payback time now. So the only time that we can really do something off the agenda is during board member comments. So what we'd like to do at this point, I am the longest serving board member. I had the honor, am I the only board member? I got to hire Karen. I believe I was the school board president then. I think that was probably one of my best decisions. So I want Karen and Cheryl, come on over here. I know you hate this part, but just give me 5 minutes of total embarrassment. I'm not going to, I can't say I'm not going to say anything stupid. I do it all the time. But what I want to give each of you, and Matt, you guys can all come up too if you want to, each board member if you want. Here, I'm going to hand that to you, Chris, if I might.
And ladies, let's have you stand out here a little bit.
Yep. I don't want to drop this. Oh, so what we did is for each of you, we have a picture, and I wanted this to be huge. I'm going to hand that to you, Karen. And Chris, if you have the other one. I wanted this thing to be like a poster. And then Julie kind of reeled me in a little bit. One about resolution of the pictures, and plus, you know, if you're like me when you retire, you have this study or whatever. We don't want to take up a whole wall. Cheryl, you probably don't want to put this on the plane to Portland or whatever. So we got that. And if, Matt, if you could grab those bricks. You always get a brick. That's to just get you out of town in case you need to hit anybody with a brick. So Karen, here's your brick. This is my weak arm from Cheryl. There is your brick as well. And I know that each of you got something just shortly before. So I want to make sure we get a picture. So we're going to do this right. Put you guys right in the middle. That's perfect. We need one more person over here. So we just wanted to give that to you, and thank you for your years of service. It's been a true joy. And I know that not only just being on a school board, but being an administrator for a school district is a thing of love. So I really appreciate your guys' time. Would you guys want to say anything?
I will in my comments.
There you go, perfect. I'm going to move this over here because I think this is where it needs to be.
Ms. Broft?
Okay. So we can start with some business items first. One of the things that Mr. Taylor asked for was an update on the website feedback, our Bond 2019 website that really kind of came together under Mr. Taylor and Mr. Poff's guidance. And we had, as you know, everyone was responsible for different topics. Not all of them were related to the bond, but we thought it was all information that our community needed to know about how finance works, et cetera. So we did present to the principals, and the feedback generally was they liked the factual information, felt it was easy to navigate, not just D38 specific. They really appreciated the information on the state issues as well, because it gives a framework. Appreciated the big picture topics and the broad number of topics. They felt like it addressed most of the things that they hear coming up in the community that needed to be addressed. And they felt it gave suggestions that were integrated real time, because we basically took the suggestions and then made those modifications based on that. Feedback from board members, we also integrated and modified that real time as you provided that feedback. We've also gotten some information from community members as well, things that they felt needed to be included, and Julie has taken most of that feedback. Some general things that we modified, and this is not an inclusive list, we've done more beyond this, but we changed the introduction and the landing page based on some feedback we received, changed the order of the icons, added subjects. We added a capacity subject that added links to the enrollment page. Added more detail to the content overall in all areas. More information was added to the facts and figures subject. We added additional slides to some areas that contained slides, like PowerPoint slides. And then we are currently working on adding additional information on the senior citizen tax credit. We'll continue to add to this as we go. It's just a matter of figuring out what factual information is out there that people need more information about, in terms of what is happening and what impacts our district with regard to enrollment, with regard to finance, with regard to community interest in certain areas. We have Gallagher on there, we have Tabor on there, just all of those factors as well. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
It does, and I appreciate it a lot. Do we have the slides that shows how our individual tax rates?
I believe those have been added. They had to be reformatted, but yes, I believe those have been added, Julie. Not yet, but almost ready to add. So had to reformat them.
Okay, which tab will they be on? Do you know? Very good. But the numbers vetted out okay?
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
Other question was with regard to the transition with Casey, and I'm sure he has to have more to say about that transition, but we have had the opportunity to schedule meetings and meet with a variety of community members, both together, and Casey's also pursued some on his own. We had discussions about the current state in our district, history, planning, et cetera, as well as long-range planning and facilities, et cetera. He also met with Cheryl around budgetary issues, and Bob was involved in enrollment as well as meeting with Cheryl, long-range planning, modulars. He's been involved in all of our OAC meetings every Monday where we meet with FIPS Construction and CRP around those modulars. And then we also have an entire, it's like 3 pages of topics that we've covered. It's an opportunity for us to kind of just make a running list of things that we need to talk about as we work on that transition. We really, honestly, have had a lot of real-time conversations too as things have come up. It's been a pleasure to have Casey here about 2 full days a week because it allows him to just kind of see things as they happen organically throughout the day. And it also allows us to address topics as they come up and for him to ask questions or, me to clarify something. So I'm sure he has more to share about that in a minute, which I'll give him the microphone in a minute. I do want to just say appreciation for all the people in District 38 that are leaving for multiple reasons. We have many, many staff members that are leaving for retirement, relocation, another opportunity somewhere else. And so want to just thank all of our employees that have given service to D38 and for whatever reason might be moving on to a different opportunity. Specifically, I wanted to show appreciation for Cheryl and the work she's done for 12 years in our district. And she has been really sort of the person who managed all those financial constraints that we've been under for many, many years. So appreciate that very much and know that she will be highly successful in Portland, and I know she's looking forward to kind of figuring out a new town. So appreciate that a great deal. Just also want to offer my thanks and appreciation to the entire D38 district administrative team, which is really only 5 of us. So that makes 4, that doesn't count me. As well as Dennis, who serves in that capacity as Chief of Security, and as well as Julie, who serves as our Public Information Officer. Without that team, we wouldn't get, we often wear like a million different hats, and so sometimes, it's funny, people, want to say, well, you didn't do right that. It's like, well, if you could watch some of these people and follow them all day long, they're probably doing 800 different things in one day because we have to have that economy, or I should say lack of economy of scale in our smaller district. And there's a lot of requirements from the state that have to be covered compliance-wise. And when you only have one person covering a lot of those, it can mean that you've got a lot of balls in the air. So appreciate that. Also want to say thank you to all of our district or school level administrators. We have Peggy Parsley in the back, and Gary was here earlier. Really, it is probably been one of the strongest administrative teams I've ever worked with. They are unilaterally dedicated to the lives of kids and have to make a lot of rough decisions every single day, but do it with grace and with attention to what's important. And they take criticism, just like all of us do from time to time. And they are resilient and stand up in the face of that criticism and still do what's right. And to me, that's the greatest judge of character, is people who do what's right even in the face of criticism. So it's easy to take the easy road out and try to please everyone, but sometimes you have to do the right thing for the end result, which in our case is the kids. Also, just really want to say time has flown, 5 years. Can't believe it's here and gone. Appreciate the opportunity that the Board of Education then and the Board of Education now gave me over those 5 years. I can tell you that the strong teams and the people we have in this district, working in the district, everyone from administration and our maintenance crews, and the times I've talked to Ricky in the middle of the night, or Cheryl in the middle of the night about snow or something else, and the opportunity to work with our food service as they prepared food for the Empty Bowls event. The times I've worked with those, all of our teachers, and been in their classrooms and been able to see and witness the great things that are happening every single day in our classrooms. The opportunities I've had to work with classified folks and watch the incredible work they do to support our kids. Sometimes that's a thankless job that doesn't get a whole lot of glory. We give a lot of thanks to our teachers, and they do an amazing job every single day. But there's a lot of people supporting those teachers in the background as well. So just know that everyone in our district has that singular focus of making sure that what happens to every child that walks through our door, that every kid has a great experience every single day. And for that, I admire and respect everyone in our district. We also have very supportive community members and families. Without those supportive community members and families, we also wouldn't have a strong district. Really, honestly, our kids are the benefactors of strong family support systems. And having been in multiple types of districts, I can tell you that that makes a huge difference in the success of our students. So the fact that we have strong families, parent communities that are wrapping themselves around all kids, not just their own, that makes a huge difference as well. And our community members, we have a lot of people who don't have students in the schools at all, never have, or haven't for a while. I think about our Kiwanis, our Lions, our Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce, our, you name it. We've got lots of different organizations around our community that reach out and support and make sure that our kids are successful and love our kids, love interacting with our kids, love knowing that they're contributing to the future of our kids and therefore the future of our country, and give selflessly of their time. And while, it's sometimes, again, not a job that they get thanked for, we need to recognize that there's people that give hours and hours to our school district and our kids every single week, and that's really important to us as well. And most of all, we have incredible students. If it wasn't for our great students, my best times in this job have been conversations I've had with students. They've told me things that I needed to know. They've made me laugh. They've had a keen understanding of what needs to happen in their own education, and they've given me advice about what we need to do to change their education so that it's more relevant and prepares them for the future. And down to, even the elementary level, I have kids giving me opportunities to sit down and give me a little bit of advice about what to do and how to make school better. That, and I have a lot of kids that beg me for snow days on a regular basis. So we have lots of challenges ahead in our district, but I know, if you think about, we're all humans, and from our challenges we grow. And I obviously have a growth mindset, so I truly believe that challenges allow us to grow, and that we're presented with challenges in life as human beings, because it is through those challenges that we grow and develop the most. If life was easy all the time, we wouldn't grow and change, and what would our purpose here on earth be? So I believe that we have challenges ahead as a district, but it will only make us stronger, and I appreciate the fact that you all bring a growth mindset to the work we do as a board, superintendent, and administrative staff every day, so that we can improve our district, because there's nothing perfect about anywhere, and there's always room for continuous improvement. And so when we have our eye on celebrating what we have accomplished and our eye on what we can accomplish in the future, that's where I hope that we'll land in the future. And then finally, just I appreciate the focus on students from everyone here and from everyone out there. That is our treasure, and that's our most important thing that we do every day, is stay focused on the future of our students, and not just one student, but every student. Not just the college-bound student, but the student that has other opportunities ahead of them. Not just the student from one side of the district versus from the other. We're focused on every single student's success. And that's what I love about this district, is that we open ourselves to the success of every single student. So I have something for Casey, and then I'm passing it on. I have created this lovely, very tricky baton that I'm passing on to you. I know it's, kind of pulled together a sticker and a baton, and I know it's very creative. Anyway, I just want you to know that you are the benefactor of a great district that has a great future, and it's all in your hands now.
Dr. Summers?
Thank you. So I just start by echoing the appreciation, both for Karen and Cheryl, as they have given so much of themselves in so many years of service. And while I don't begin to pretend to understand all the different aspects of that work, what I can tell you in the past several weeks is I've learned a ton. So I appreciate your grace with me coming on board, and the space that you've afforded me to be able to do so. I'm going to keep my comments fairly brief. There's several things that Karen illustrated, I think, in her closing comments that are important, though, to make mention of. One, we are a great school district here in Lewis Palmer School District, and we are on a great path. And so that is exciting, it's inspiring, it's humbling to be part of a great team, a great community, and work on behalf of our students, our staff, our parents, families, in ensuring that we continue on that great path. And as Karen also alluded to, we have challenges that we know are in front of us. And so the time that's been afforded me has been great to learn about the strong foundations that are already in place, as well as what those challenges consist of. And so I think I've shared this before, but know that you will get all of me, all in making sure that we are taking those challenges head on in a collaborative, in a thoughtful manner. And so just grateful for that responsibility and the baton that's being bestowed here for me. I will just make mention that my entry plan, the first pre-entry phase of roughly, I think it's more like 60, somewhere in the 75 neighborhood number of days, has been great thus far. It's given me a chance to be immersed in a lot of the work that's taking place, spending time with our district staff, school staff. I believe it was a couple Fridays ago, meeting with some teachers at the Summer Learning Academy, some of the events that Ms. Phillips had mentioned as well. All have been very insightful, have really helped form a strong foundation. I'm looking forward to more of the one-to-one meetings with our board members, and then really kicking off the listening and learning tour, hitting the ground learning, so to speak, beginning July 1. I've been told that July 4th I will be some type of special guest in the phenomenal Independence Day activities. And Lori, apparently you are the manager, as Julie is passing that baton to you for that particular day. But those types of activities and events, working very closely with Julie and Vicki also on being accessible and available to the community. So excited about publishing those opportunities and beginning to form more of those connections and relationships with our community. This will be the last time, as you mentioned, Mr. Prof, that I'll be in the spectator seat. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of tonight in that quote-unquote spectator mode and officially wrap up the comments for this stage. Oh, and I'm passing it to Cheryl.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the kind words. I so much appreciate it, and thank you for the brick. It'll grace my office in Portland, and they'll go, why do you have a brick? But no, thank you very much. And I'll explain the history that actually the brick comes, probably not this particular brick, but there were bricks left over from Big Red when it was remodeled years ago. And so they started handing those bricks out to folks as they left. So that's the tradition of the the brick. So thank you very much. Just a few things. The new CFO, David Cruz, and I had the opportunity to spend the day together. I was able to brief him in terms of our legal responsibilities and the legal responsibilities of the CFO position, mesh them up with our attorneys, and they also provided them with an oversight of what we provided to David, and then had them add their comments. He was also able to have a phone conversation with our independent financial advisor, Maddie, with more to be follow in the future, so we got that done. And Marcy and I also sent him all the files related to the audit, and connected him with John Paul, our audit senior, and arranged for some additional training for him as well, per John Paul, understanding his background and knowing what might be especially beneficial for them. So we've got that all accomplished. It has been an honor to serve. I've been reading a lot about leadership, as always, and like the term of the fact that our students, as well as all of our staff members, lift each other up. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and it has been an excellent ride here. We are an excellent district, and I wish you all, my colleagues, who I'm going to miss so much, and our students and teachers and staff, and bus drivers, janitors, grounds maintenance, the entire crew, all the best of life and the best wishes to all of you, and continued success for Lewis Palmer 38. And Karen, thank you so much. It's been an honor to serve under you, and I know I say this on behalf of everyone. You were a leader, you were a woman whose words mattered, and you were consistent in what you did and how you led us. So please know, I truly believe, and I know we all do, you left Lewis Palmer and its students so much better than what you found it, and you continued the legacy, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, I think you're up again with the next agenda item.
Oh boy, why not?
Well, if it's the first item, I think I can score with a motion before she can get out of her, well, it's too late.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of Lewis Palmer School District Number 38 in El Paso County, State of Colorado, in accordance with CRS 2244-105, that the 2019-2020 annual budget be adopted, and that the amounts shown in the resolution attached to the minutes of this meeting be appropriated to each fund as specified in the adopted budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, and ending June 30th, 2020.
I'll second that motion. Questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to make a comment. I just wanted to say that I don't think folks sometimes realize that when we're given a budget, it comes from the legislature, and when they do their appropriations, it comes in May, and then we have from May, and by law, this has to be voted on and done by July 1st. So that's a small window, and if they gave us a bigger window, that'd be great, but I commend everyone for working hard and diligent with what you had in front of you. That's something I've learned this year. And some of my growth is that I didn't realize how much goes into this budget and how much the legislature affects this budget. So that's all I just want to make that comment.
Any other comments? Hearing none, Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Plouffe?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
I would like to make a motion to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, excuse me, of Lewis Palmer School District 38 authorizes the superintendent or his/her designee to borrow available unencumbered cash balances in the capital reserve, insurance reserve, building reserve, and nutritional food services funds in accordance with CRS 2244-113 to be used to fund short-term cash needs of the district during fiscal year 2019-2020, and be it further resolved that funding for incomplete capital reserve fund projects be carried forward to fiscal year 2019-2020, and a portion of the insurance reserve and nutritional food services funds be used for one-time expenditures related to capital equipment purchases and to intentionally reduce fund balances.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I do. Can you regurgitate what that means in layman's terms?
Sure. So there's two pieces, really three pieces to this motion. The first piece is that, as you well know, our tax payments don't come until the end of the year. So we have to make sure we have adequate cash flow to meet all of our needs. To do that, we borrow available cash from other funds as opposed to the operating fund during the school year. And then when those tax payments come in towards the end of the year, we pay those funds back. So that's the first part. You're authorizing us to do that. Then the second part of that is that because our fiscal year ends June 30th, right in the middle of the summer, we have a number of capital projects that we've started on, but we don't have them finished. So the second part is that you're authorizing us to take the budget that we previously had approved and roll over, if you will, unfinished projects and unfinished budget dollars into the next school year. So that's the second part. And then the third part, by state law, and it's been this way for about 20 years, anytime that we dip into fund balance, anytime that ending fund balance that we budget is lower than the beginning fund balance, i.e. we're going to spend and draw it down, we have to make sure we let you all know and that you all pass a resolution stating that you know it. So that's that last part, that we're drawing fund balance down in the insurance reserve fund and the food service fund. And the insurance reserve fund is just as a matter of course, it's better to keep money in the general fund whenever possible. The nutritional service fund, it is higher than what state law would like it, or I'm sorry, federal law would like it to be, so we have to draw it down. What the interesting piece of that, though, is that our food service lunch prices are also mandated by federal law. So we have no choice but to collect the funds and then spend them. What we are spending them on is equipment, so we can do more cooking in each school. So there it is in a nutshell.
So housekeeping.
Basically, I would say, but important to know what's going on.
Any additional questions? Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Poff.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
So I'd like to make a motion for the next item, Matt. I'm trying to keep this thing going. I apologize.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to declare the board's intention to participate in the general election on November 5th, 2019, to appoint Kathy Ymca as the district's designated election official for this election, and to direct Ms. Ymca to notify the county clerk and recorder of the board's intention to appear on the ballot.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Just a question. When we put things on the ballot, the district is financially responsible for the ballot questions for elections for school board members. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Do we know how much that is approximately?
It's based on, so it's a coordinated election. So they look at the number of words and number of lines each question brings forward, look at the total cost, and they divide it out and do the math. So we don't know for sure how much it will cost, but a general year it's about $36,000.
Any additional questions? Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Poff.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Okay, I'll wait for you to say the title and then I'll do it.
Go ahead, Mr.
All right,
Buff.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the call for nominations for the November 5th, 2019 school director election and placement of a paid ad seeking candidates as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Ms. Upchurch.
Nope, I don't
Okay.
have one.
Hearing none, Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Poff.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
All right, next agenda item, discuss solutions to address middle school overcrowding. Mr. Poff and Mr. Taylor?
You expecting me to say, I don't talk much.
I can say something. So Karen, thank you very much. I did do a quick review of the website, and I thought, I could see changes, and it's good. And I look forward to it actually continuing, right? Because as we get more information, it's a good place to share it. I commit to really learn, understand everything that's out there, so that as I speak with members of the community, I represent the facts as I understand them. And I appreciate you and the administration for everything you've done to help get that page full of good information. So thank you. I don't have anything else to say about this issue.
Just to kind of wrap up what we talked about last Monday. So Chris and I, after I get back from Alaska, are going to get together in mid-July. I'm assuming we haven't had this conversation yet, and start working out some of the bond verbiage, and then present. I want to make sure the rest of the board's good with this. In the work session in August is when we're going to come in and talk about bond verbiage. Is that correct? I want to make sure that we're good with that.
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay, because I know that's going to kick in the election period. Do we want to wait until the actual board meeting in August to have that conversation?
Can I get back to you on that?
Yes, absolutely. There's no hurry on that. I'm very comfortable where we are in the process. I think the one thing that does kind of concern me is there's still some confusion out there, and I mean, we need to really work out a way. Each board member needs to really get involved. There's a lot of disinformation out there, and some people are hearing this disinformation. And so I think we need to work to get the facts out. I've always said this for every year I've been on the board. I just want the true facts out there, and then however the election goes, that's the great thing about how we're set up in Colorado, and I love it, is the community gets to decide on these major tax issues. And it's our goal to make sure that they get the facts, and then they decide. So I'm pretty happy with the process right now, and I think we'll be prepared in the August school board meeting to have that discussion.
All right. Any other?
I have a comment. We've talked quite a lot about the education piece, and setting up the website I think is a great, it's been really helpful, and all the work that you two have done has been really helpful, and then communicating that piece and having those conversations with the community as individuals is very, very important. I heard something about 2 weeks ago that there's always an education piece, but the other very, very important piece is in the public realm, and Chris, you've talked about this before too, having a unified message, and not just the messaging, but that we all together are agreeing that this is absolutely necessary, and to help with our capacity issue. But so I think it's worth a thought process in terms of how are the five of us going to present to the community as individual voices, but also all together, so that that confidence piece for the community is there. And I think there are some ways to do that in the fall, and I'm definitely thinking about that. And that also goes, in terms of working with Dr. Summers as he comes on, so that there will be, and most of you here are interested in that very, very detailed educational piece. There are many people in our community who are busy or living lives that don't necessarily lend themselves to being able to listen to all of our talk through our meetings. But what can we do to visibly be out in the community and to relay that message very efficiently and very visibly, so that people have the confidence that we have worked through this, that we've thought through it, and it's absolutely what we need.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Any additional comments before we move on?
I
Mr. Taylor?
would like to make one more, and that is, my wife is a teacher for most of her career, and I asked her about what was her most important reasons for teaching. And compensation matters, but it wasn't number one. She actually said that class size bothered her more. If she had too many students that she couldn't give them what they deserve, caused her more grief than whatever her payroll was. And I went on one of your tours over at Lewis Palmer Middle School, and you know, when you have fire code capacity and you're living within it, that's fine. But that's not the ideal situation for those kids or those teachers. And I have to just say, I think we owe our kids more than just fire code capacity. I think we need to really give them an education that they deserve. And so I appreciate the comments that you made about the website informing education. You don't get a lot of passion out of reading a website, do you? You know what I'm saying? You know, I'll never forget Mark when we first started talking this in February, January. I'll do this if we're 100% behind it. Now, I'm 100%. The more I've learned, Mark, as we've really pulled this information together and as we've worked with the school district, the need's real. In fact, it's past due. This should have been addressed. We wouldn't have portables this year. All the noise around portables is because we didn't act in the past. The middle school overcrowding is not something that we should be taking lightly. And the fact that that someone would say that they don't trust those numbers or this, they just have to go look. I mean, it's so clear to me. So I'm with you. It's like we were talking earlier. How do we get information out? How do we do better about really, that's a lot of information. And I saw a couple letters to the editor. I'm gonna write on about 5 of them, I'm gonna write every month. Now that's not the end-all answer, because I think the face-to-face meetings and conversations mean a lot more. So, me personally, I'm gonna go door to door. Not campaigning for me, but for our kids. So this fall, for all those who sign up to run for election, I know you'll be campaigning. I'll be campaigning too for our kids. And that means a yes on this possible bond.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, first reading of revisions to policies GBK, IHBEA, IKA, JBB, JFABE, JH, JJJ, and we can't forget JQ.
Can never leave JQ out of the mix.
That's why I wanted to read everything up to this point, because I didn't want to have to do that.
You have before yourselves those policies. Do you have any questions?
Oh, no. Okay. I'll start off. Help me understand the whole process of this, why we went through this for these.
Okay.
I mean, where does this come from?
This comes from CASB revisions and re-edits according to federal law. Some of the federal laws changed, and when they changed the definition of foster care child and the placement of foster care children and how we must assign a student within the school with no waiting period if they are in foster care or placed under said foster care system, then the definitions within the policies change. So that's why the strikeouts, and that seem a little wackadoo and a little bit sometimes like, why eliminate that word? It's because it more closely aligns with federal law and legislation regarding those. Most of these changes in these policies that you see before you were specifically regarding language on the definitions of homeless, in foster care, and placed children. So that's where the definitions come. That's why the strange. And in this case, if you look at, I don't know, IHBEA, which is the first one there alphabetically, you'll say who are eligible for funding pursuant to the English Language Proficiency Act. That doesn't exist anymore. So that changed. So that was a straight.
Okay, so this isn't us going out and trying to find something to change because we want to change something.
I can find better words to change, yeah.
Right, exactly. So this is, and these were suggested and reviewed by CASB.
Correct.
And our legal advisor.
Yes.
And it's been passed them.
Correct. And most of the legal advisor, when reviewing with the legal advisor, he made statements like, yeah, CASB just goes through and redacts those words as they update the language. And the idea behind this is with our policy review, we just went through that policy review 2 years ago now, is to not let them get out of line with what goes forward. Because the next thing you know, you skip one revision, and the next word that changes in and you leave that in there, you just did something you shouldn't have done.
Is there any concerns or anything that you think we need to focus on that might be in least bit controversial? I mean, I read through them all. I couldn't find anything that I had issues with.
No, there were no real issues. Some of it, like JBB, actually comes from not CASB. The JBB sexual harassment comes from OCR because they wanted clarity between policy AC and policy JBB as to which one covers sexual harassment. Does policy AC cover that, or does policy JBB cover sexual harassment? So that there was clarity when someone experienced that, how they addressed their concerns. So there were no concerns from the legal counsel.
Quick question. So
Yes.
you had mentioned federal law. Is this just federal law, or is it
No,
federal
this
and
is,
state?
there is state, actually the next review, EHC is state.
Okay.
Most of these changes are federal law and OCR, the Office of Civil Rights. Clarity. They wanted us to provide clarity. For example, they went through our website and they said, you didn't put the email of the person who is supposed to receive these complaints. You need to put the email on everybody. So that had to be added because the first statement was put up there before email existed.
Any additional questions? All right, next agenda item, first reading of new policies EHC, KE, KEC, and KEF.
EHC is the one I said that state law was requiring, the safeguarding of PII. And that one came in, and that was specifically regarding state law that was implemented with the last legislative session. And, you know, it goes along with CRS 2473, the citation at the bottom with consumer data privacy.
And we don't have any concerns in waiting to the August board meeting to vote on these?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I have the same question that Mark did. So what was the logic or the why behind KE, KEC, and KEF?
That was to separate out how public concerns were handled because it sort of wrapped them all up and created confusion as to which policy addressed which concern. So if you had a concern about textbooks, that would end up in KEC, KER. If you had a concern about parking lot access, that ended up in KEC, KER. And people, this was to try to clarify how those things were handled. And then underlying all of this will come some changes within the regulations to make sure that all of the regulations align with the same number of days and the same number of, because we've switched organizationally now, who's in line to hear them, so that that is consistent throughout those policies as well. So, because sometimes what happens is an organization changes, we've changed structure, and the next thing you know, step 3 doesn't exist anymore, because step 3 was Cheryl. And that position no longer exists, so.
So
that's
with
how that was.
KE was the one that I had.
Okay,
That was.
let me look at that.
You said KE?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the one where, so I was just curious on that one, when it strikes out. I personally, as a parent, when I look at this one, the way it was written, it laid it out pretty easily and pretty fluidly of, this is the complaint procedure, teacher, principal, superintendent, board of education. And striking that out seems more vague, and puts a lot of responsibility on the superintendent. So I was just curious why we wouldn't keep that process in there.
I believe what it was is it says it shall be referred to the superintendent who shall process the complaint in accordance with this policy's accompanying regulation, which means it's processed by the superintendent or their designee, which means it comes down to the appropriate regulation describes how it is. What they felt with this is they'd put too much how you do it into the policy, and that should be in regulation.
So there's a regulation that.
There's a regulation that accompanies this, which is KEC, KEF's. The old KE, KEC regulation now becomes the same regulation for how each one is processed. I know, it's sad that I know that, but Dennis laughs.
So does it still allow for, let's say somebody goes through the entire process, all the way up, and
It comes to you.
comes to us?
Yep.
It still comes to,
You still comes
right,
to you.
it comes, that's what I was gonna say, it's still by law that it comes to us.
Yeah.
Because the way I read this, when I first read it, it looked like it comes to us and then we immediately turn around and send it right back down again. So if somebody's.
No,
standing
it would
there-
have to work its way through
Sure.
the chain
Okay.
before it comes to the board. If it doesn't work its way through the chain, then there's no reason for a
I
change.
think if it comes directly to you without going through, that's when you
Send it back. And there could be clarity in there. I could answer in that it shall be referred to the superintendent or designee who shall process, because that is a common phrase in there, because it does say superintendent. I will probably add in the final thing, or designee. That makes, maybe that clarifies it, I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause
when I read it to me, it becomes, it's clear to me, but I read these too much. So, and they took the word grievances out because grievances specifically refers to an employment aspect, and that's guarded by GBK, which is the employee policy.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not tying hands too much, so that if, let's say, somebody comes to us and says they have a problem with a math teacher, obviously that's not under our purview, that would go.
That would go down to the principal.
But I wouldn't think that I would need to refer it to our superintendent. I would think it'd be easier for us to make sure that this policy doesn't forbid us from saying, and it seems no-brainer, but.
You as the board have one employee, him.
Right.
And he would then
So
take that down
reference-
to the appropriate level, which would be in the high schools, the assistant principal or principal, depending on who was the direct supervisor of that. So that's how that would refer down to.
Right.
So, yeah,
I just wanted to make sure it was easy to understand for the layman.
try.
Come on, Tiffany, it's written by attorneys. Any additional questions? All right, Mr. Foster, you're up on the next agenda item, the Cora request dashboard.
Yes. So sort of two views on this, and I can speak out of both sides. The core requests we get a number of core requests this year. We've got about 50, probably running right about 39 hours, 40 hours of my time. But I try to be assiduous to track that fairly accurately. Sometimes it doesn't pick up the phone calls that go to the lawyer just to clarify a point or to clarify a word, and sometimes that may not or be included in that, because it may be something that I'm discussing something else, and that is bought into, and it takes 5 minutes to do it, but that's 5 minutes of attorney time, which I'm sure he bills us for. He does. And so those core requests, sort of two minds in those. There are core dashboards out there which demonstrate every core request that comes in. They're posted, the request is posted, and then the response is posted to it. There are one or two cities that do that.
So is that like I'm sorry to interrupt, but that sounds kind of interesting. So as soon as they get the request, it goes up on this board?
No,
and it
no,
says like
it's
in progress, and then?
No, it's something that is after the fact.
Okay.
I'll be very honest with you, couldn't manage that.
Well,
Don't
I
have
mean,
the
just
staff
we're
to manage
creating
it.
work. I
Right.
wouldn't want to do that.
Right, and ultimately, you know, I keep a sort of a running tab of things for my own purposes of trying to keep track of, you know, how much I've spent, and of course to inform you of how much is spent. I mean, there are two sides to that. One is that the more information out there, as with the dashboards for the mobiles and things like that, the more information, the better. The second side to that is sometimes information is requested about people, our contracts or things like that, and instead of that being out there to one person, now you've just posted that for the world. And so it becomes more readily available. So balancing that out. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. So either way, there's the good side and the bad side. A dashboard is legal. Our legal advice said you can do it. Don't know if it's sometimes the best, because he said it could be presumed. It could be, if you posting names and all of that information, it could be considered that you're trying to quash public inquiry. So both sides. Are you quashing it? Are you helping it? I don't know.
No, we're just being transparent.
Right.
We're not doing either.
Can I?
And that's it.
We're
You know,
being
is it transparent? Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
what it is. We're opening
It is what
the
it
doors.
is. True.
Can I back up?
It is.
Sorry, I thought I might have interrupted your train of thought. How do most of the Cora requests come in? Is there a form or a?
There's a form online. Very few people use it. Usually they just say, I have a Cora about this. Sometimes in a couple of cases, I have some that are very assiduous in following the Cora form, and I get them through I have different processes out there. You know, they have an online blank form you can fill out. It auto sends to me. And to be honest, some of the time spent on these is not strictly my time. For bigger requests, sometimes it's perhaps a secretary's job, you know, administrative assistant's job to run all the copies of it, or to do that if they can do that. But the final, you know, review of it, any redactions, anything like that is depending on the material, is sent to the lawyer for a review of the redactions. Bank statements, those things can be tricky because they put account numbers all over those things sometimes, and down in the margins. And it's tricky to track all of those, so.
But there wouldn't be anything additionally that you would be redacting in order to provide us a dashboard?
It should have already been redacted.
It should have
That's what
already
I'm
been
saying.
redacted.
I'm just clarifying.
Correct. Anything that would be public would be redacted.
So we're not creating more work for you?
Just from the perspective of putting it up online and creating the base page and doing that a little bit there, yeah.
Now, one of the things you said, Bob, that I just want to kind of address about, you know, us putting this up would somehow appear to be us trying to squash this. To me, just putting it up is complete transparency. Now, if we did analytics, or we published statistics based on that, like we get so many, you know, core requests from this person, then that to me would be a form of we're trying to show, you know, something else. But if we just, here's a request, it came in at this date and time, here's the actual request that we received, and here's how we resolved it, and here's how many hours we spent on it.
Well, and I would post the request itself, which includes the person's name.
Well,
and then I
bottom
would have to
line is-
redact their emails, though.
Well, here's Bob. A core request is public information.
Correct.
I think it's important, and I will be adamant to me if we're going to do this, that the actual core request itself is part of this dashboard.
Okay.
I think it's important that here's the request that was made, so people can read what did they ask for specifically. You can see the verbiage of what they asked for. I think that's important. Here's how we resolved it. So someone could look and say, wait a minute, they wanted to know how many, let's say they did a core request, I want to know how many vehicles you have in the district that are Fords, and you provide them Chevys. Well, you didn't answer their core request, right? So someone could look at this and say, wait a minute, they asked for Fords and you gave them Chevys. So I think it's important that if we're going to be completely transparent, here's the request, everyone can read it, how it's how it's worded, and here's how we resolved it.
Correct.
Full and complete transparency.
Bob, one question that I have for you is, I've always been concerned about the 5 administrators that we have and how many hats that you wear. So are there trends? So every year, do you get a core request for X, Y, and Z, or does it vary?
It changes. It picks up at around election time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And it picks up in around election time. It's been busier. 50 this year.
Well,
I had 55 hours, I think, something, I think maybe last year.
I don't think I asked a good question, or maybe I did. But each year, if we look from January to December 31st,
Right.
is there a handful of core requests by whomever that are requested each and every year?
Not consistently.
Okay, well, I
Not
guess.
consistently. It's, yeah, I haven't had a consistent pattern.
Okay, that's fair.
I think where Matt was headed with this, you know, every year, we just voted for a budget.
Right.
Now, we know with budget information, it's already out on the website.
Right.
I mean, on the main page, you click budget, boom, you're there.
I think we have probably some of the requests, if there have been patterns or information that's out there, the enrollment data dashboard, improving that.
So that's a great
putting that-
example, Bob.
Yeah.
So after October,
Yeah.
you
I'll
could
go
create
through and-
another page underneath this, and Matt, you can tell me if I'm heading down the right path.
Mhm.
Most frequently requested core request, kind of like, we're gonna give it to you now, not, I mean, if you said enrollment is something every year,
Mhm.
you know, 80% of the time, someone's gonna do a core request on enrollment. Let's just put it out there ahead of
Well,
time.
And it is now out there with the enrollment data for the last 5 to 7 years.
So,
Yeah.
so there's an advantage.
And next year it will be upgraded to that.
So there really is an advantage
There is,
by
yeah.
putting this on a dashboard, so you could look at it and say, you know what, the last 3 years, this has always been, you know what, this year, let's create a page just for that, just like an enrollment.
Right.
You know, we put the information out. Was that where you're heading, Matt?
Yeah, that's where I'm headed. You know, what
That
I'd
sort
like to
of?
do is
Right.
just, you know, if we're spending so much time, let's just simplify the process. Let's get the data out there, and if we see trends, and we're not 100% sure if someone is interested in that particular item, you know, let's just put it out there.
Well, and I do make some of the most simple core requests, I'll be very honest with you, are usually references back to either board docs or the Fiscal Transparency Act, or those things that are already in and I think sometimes people don't know where it is, maybe.
Sure.
Because websites are big.
So in that example, thank you for bringing that up, Bob, that was good. In that example, you're saying there's some percentage of core requests that you don't really answer the core request. You direct them to a location to
Correct.
get it
Well,
themselves.
that is the answer to it. That is the record,
Right.
which is right there.
So you could on this dashboard say directed to the following link, and you could put that link in there and say, there's where the information is.
I would probably, there was one page I sort of liked of the Cora, which was, it dated and named the Cora to keep them track, because sometimes they get multiples within a day. Sometimes not. But then it dated, named it, and then opened to the request, and then up in the upper right-hand was a hyperlink over to the actual data, which was either the response or the document that was responsive.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Can you direct us to anywhere you've seen dashboards that you like?
Now you're going to ask me for the website I took. It was a New York small town, and I would have to, upstate New York.
I mean, you can forward it to us later.
Yeah, I would have to forward
Okay.
it to you, because I don't know if I could. I'll have to think about what search term I use to find it,
Okay.
because every state names their requests differently. So I used Vermont or Connecticut, New York, one of those northeastern states, one of the colonies.
Is there anyone
In
in Colorado?
Not really. Not the best that I've seen. Some good, some not so. And the state doesn't do anything because it is more work.
Well, I'd be interested to know what you would recommend based on your knowledge of what work it would take to put it together, hoping that it would be minimal for you.
It's hard to say how much, because I haven't done it. So, I mean, to do it for a while, but I hate to do something and then cut those things off.
What's the primary purpose of the dashboard?
I think in those instances, it's to, if someone is looking for a document, then perhaps it is of something of everyone's request. So maybe everybody wants to know.
Us that question and not Bob, because we're the ones asking him to do that.
So.
Okay, let me ask each of you, what's the purpose of this dashboard?
I was considering for me primarily, it's twofold. One is, like Matt said, there may be trends, and in the greater realm of being transparent and establishing greater trust with the community, if there are trends, if there's stuff that people are wanting to know that we could just put on the website, let's do that. The second is that we hear about the core request, but we don't really know necessarily everything that's gone on behind that. So there have been times where it's been a little bit of a mystery to me, and granted, I'm newer on the board, but I think it would just be helpful. And then dovetailed on that is also that if he could hyperlink things, or then that educates the community in terms of finding the information they need without taking additional time from the well-impacted administration.
I think I understand your points, and let me start with the first one. The concept of patterns, I've heard Bob say he hasn't seen patterns. Did you review recent years or just recent months, or?
Recent months, probably.
Okay.
I'd have to look back to see really if there's any really established pattern over the.
So that's the first side is I agree with, let's put it out there instead of having anybody to have to ask, so everybody has access. I like that. I support that 100%. I don't know how a dashboard gets us there. Other than tracking the pattern of information being requested, I don't see that on a dashboard myself. I think that's just more of a, here's all the core requests, this is how I'd classify them, this information we need to post. So I don't know that a dashboard changes that objective.
For me, as one board member, and I would definitely encourage this for every board member, you want to be informed. You want this information as a board member, and that's the thing that I always tell people is board members need to be the best listeners there are, because you want to listen to everything. For me, it also allows a board member to see what information is going out, to read that and review it if I want to as a board member. If I don't want to, that's fine. As a board member, you can make that decision. But for me, I think in my 12 years, I wish we'd had this a long time ago. So, because I know, Bob, if there's a core request that's made, I want to see all of Mark's emails. You would notify us. You'd send me an email and you'd say, Mark, hey, just to let you know, there's a core request. I think as board members, we need to know every core request. And to me, if it's going to go out and one person asks for it, I want everybody to see it, to include the board members so we can review it as well. So it's a key. I don't even know if the word dashboard is the right word. We probably need to come out with something else. It's a transparency page to just, everybody can see it. It's being completely transparent. And as a board member, we should want to see this information as well and not have to ask Bob, because what could happen is someone could say, hey, I did a core request. Look at this information I got. Well, it would have been nice if I'd have known, oh, that went out, a month ago and I had a chance to review it. But then it puts the ball in my court. If I want to look at it, as a board member, I can go look at it. Same as any other public member.
So I'm in support of it being available for us as board members. The more information we know, the better. I am adamantly not in support of names of community members being put out there. I think that we need to protect the personally identifiable information of our staff and our community. And I think that, but having an understanding of what's being requested and why, and educating ourselves, I have no problem with that. And if we want to use it as a means to educate the community, absolutely educating the community with information that we are responsible for, I'm in support of that as well. So I think if you're going to put it on a dashboard, the best way to do it would be this core request was made. We just recently started, we didn't used to have watermarks. We could take the watermarks out, or putting it similar to what we do with our personnel items, where we have the opportunity to see and understand and have the full understanding of the ins and outs of our district. I would support that, but I would not support putting names of anyone that works for the district or otherwise in a dashboard.
I just would tell you that a lot of times the core request is requesting employee information, and that's the point of the core so we can't redact that, because employee contracts are public record.
Right.
So we can't. So we can't protect the employee. And that
And,
was
and
Bob's
ultimately-
point.
That's also already
And
public.
ultimately,
And that's
the
important to
requester
me.
of
I
the
want,
Cora, ultimately, the requester of the Cora, that's not PII.
You
Yeah.
can't Cora personal identification information,
You
right?
could-
The
but-
traditional, that's protected by law, your PII information that you're
Right.
referring to, you can't Cora that and we can't release it.
Name,
But
address,
you
phone
can
number.
I mean, that stuff
release-
but you can't, we're not gonna
But the
give out.
name's gonna be on there.
The
is what
name's
I
gonna be
hear
on there.
Tiffany
and
saying she doesn't want that.
Here's the bottom line.
Mhm.
If somebody sends an email to Bob doing a Cora request, and I'm assuming that you get a lot of Cora requests through emails, that email is public information. So if you don't put it out there, we're hiding something.
well, the information, the communication we give to each other is also personal, respectfully, is also public information,
It goes
but,
out every day.
well, I don't send
Every
it out
day.
to everybody, but it's between us, and if it's Cored, it's Cored. But I'm not out there saying, hey, D38, by the way, I set up a meeting with my superintendent at 2 o'clock. I'm not out there doing that. So my point is that everything is public information, but if we're going to release that public information, then why not just have a chat room? Why even have emails?
Well, it's not a chat room. What I'm saying is, it's public information. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect certain people,
No,
but
I'm trying
expose
to-
others.
no.
That's ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to not be transparent.
No.
And you're trying to hide, and you're saying that you want to protect certain people's information, but not the ones they go after.
No, I want to protect everybody's information.
Then don't do it. Then we just don't do it.
Fair enough.
But let me go to my second point for Teresa. That was the time and effort of doing this. I think I just heard you say it will double your time and effort to do a dashboard on top of the core
How
request.
much, how much time it takes to I haven't done it, so the initial creation stage, yeah, that's gonna take a little bit, but each request, and this is where it gets sorta, each request, another 20 minutes, 30
So
minutes.
I'm just gonna
30
say,
minutes.
I think we're adding an administrative burden that.
It is a burden.
I haven't heard the
but I don't-
benefit yet. I mean, I hear transparency. Well, I agree, we should be transparent. I know there was a Cora request on the thought exchange, and to Karen's good judgment, she just said, let's give it to everybody.
Yeah.
Which, I think there's a judgment factor here that the administration should exercise. I'm not of the opinion, personally, that I need to be involved in all these Cora requests. I'd rather be more involved in the policy development, maintenance, and the overall oversight for our district, rather than dealing with specific Cora requests.
Yeah, I'm not thinking so much as being involved or specific requests. But I'm wondering if there's a way in some sort of executive content that we could know month by month what the core requests, or is that not?
Well, before we kind of back away from the whole thing here, Bob, you track all the Core requests anyway.
Yeah.
When someone makes a Core request, you've got to save that off, right?
Right.
So at the same time you're saving it off, you put it in another location, we can set up the website that when the new entry goes in, it creates a new log. I personally think it's worth the effort, plain and simple. I think we're showing our community, here's what's going on with our district. And this is one item that's going on with our district. I think it's important for everyone to see how many hours we're spending on Cora requests. I think it's that important to show the facts. Here's what's going on. We're being transparent. Here's everything. We're not trying to hide anything. So I get that it's going to add work for Bob. I'm sorry. I think it's that important. And Bob can get someone else to do it or whatever. To me, it's that important that we show complete transparency and that we're open about our Core requests.
So again, it's my perception here only, but I don't even know I don't know what we're talking about, to be real frank.
That's one of my points, though.
But do I need to? That's my point.
Well-
Is I'm like, how does this affect me, really?
Well, as an individual, I don't know if the community really cares what one staff member's contract says. I don't know. But that's one of the reasons. The others are for various documents and things like that that may or may not be on the web. Sometimes they're easier for public inspection. What comes to mind is the asbestos reports from Grace Best. Seem to be a frequent flyer, but they're on the web. They're hard to find. So
let me just
we took
address
them off the
whole
web because they were
administrative
6 years old.
issue, because frankly, you could automate the whole thing by just having them fill out their form, and you just then post the form, and it's publicly available. It would eliminate all your work,
Right.
except the actual delivery of whatever it is.
But I can't require them to fill out the form.
By law, and see if I say this right, Bob. By law, you really can't mandate they use a form. You can suggest and say, here's the form that we would like for you to use, but there's only certain verbiage that you need to put in an
Yeah.
email and a letter. You know, something like, consider the following a Colorado Open Records Act
Yeah.
request, blah, blah, and you have to do it.
That's it.
So,
And, that's why most of the requests come through as 1 or 2 liners.
Well, all the more reason, why is this an issue? I'm still not fully understanding why this is a priority for us.
I think it is. I mean,
But why? That's all.
I think
I've explained why it is. but go ahead.
It's a matter of me being informed personally on the board and having overheard conversations about core requests the last year, and I was a little bit startled at times. But then we don't necessarily see those documents. Or quite frankly, I end up seeing them on social media. But I have to click on the screenshot to see what it is.
So it's out there.
It's
on
out
social
there.
media. They
It's
can
just that it
control
hasn't been provided, and I feel like it's more trustworthy for me to receive it from here.
Well, you just brought up another great point, which is why we put the watermarks on there for one reason. Someone could grab a quarter request, they could manipulate it if they wanted to, put it out on social media, and people are like, well, I'm getting all my information from someone. Why not just say, you know what, if you question what someone got in a quarter request, go to our website. You can see exactly what they got from us.
And let me reiterate too, I was thinking initially there may be trends that may be in the best interest of the whole community, that we might be able to just streamline things for our administrators, given that I had a conversation with Bob a few weeks ago about the number of hours he'd spent on this, on core requests. So that was my initial thought. And I hear in this discussion, there are other reasons to do it. But
We could do it for a year, and then whoever's on the board next year can revisit it. Any board could revisit it at any time. I would just tell you right now, being on the board, I'm about to make a motion to do this. I think it's that important.
If it's to educate ourselves, then why aren't we if it's for the purpose of so that we are informed and we are educated, I do not feel comfortable having a teacher's name attached to their contract floating around in a core request. I don't. And so I actually, I understand that, but I don't think that we should be putting it out on a dashboard. I understand people request it, and I think that it is, if we want to know about it, that's fine. But saying that I'm doing it to protect a few individuals, actually, it's a little insulting, to be quite honest, because it has nothing to do with individuals. It has to do with everybody. I don't care if it's Mickey Mouse or if it's, I don't know, Popeye. I don't care who it is or what. It's the entire document. I would like to not have the names of individuals inside and outside our district on our dashboard. If we, as board members, want to have ourselves educated for it and be responsible of knowing what Bob is doing, and I can absolutely appreciate that if we have a dashboard, if we have a compass on how much work he's going through, that's important to me, yes. But there's no reason that we can't do that similar to what we do with our personnel items. We don't put out there which teachers are going where, or who's left, or who's fired, or who's retiring. We keep that in our personnel items for a reason, because we're protecting them. And it's the same, for me, it's my principle, it's the same thing. And that's my principle. That's the principle I'm not willing to waive on. And that's just the way it is for me. But I respect.
Well, every year, when I was a cop, I think it was one of the local newspapers or someone published my name and how much I made. So everybody in the county, state, the nation, knew I was a cop by name, and my name's so unique, it's not John Smith, knew I was a cop and how much I made, because it's public information. It is what it is. And so I get it. If you want to fix that, you need to go up to the state and say, you know, what a teacher's salary is, what they make is public information. And after they quit, those lists, I believe, are public information as well, later on. Is that right, Bob?
Correct.
Yeah, could someone call and say, I want to know what teachers quit this year? And after we vote on it,
That's public.
it's public information.
Public who you hired, public who leaves.
So the question is, who are you controlling the information from?
Right.
But
So,
good.
so Bob, you had mentioned earlier that oftentimes you just refer them to some place where it exists.
If it is readily available on the website, or I know that document is over in board docs, or I know that document is sitting in financial or fiscal transparency, I refer them to that.
Do you have a rough idea of percentage of core requests that you just point them to information versus find?
Be a total flying guess, about 20%, 25%.
So one option could be is take every core request and look at every core request and say, how do we post this information publicly, ongoing, so that that one will never be repeated?
True. And that's what I've, when we went to the enrollment information, that was part of that.
That was a lot of effort.
There was a pattern, if you can find a pattern to the information that needs to go out. At one point in time, we had done some more with asbestos, but the sort of demand for asbestos information sort of.
Well, I appreciate your
Yeah.
perspective on whatever the information is, right, that they're asking. And we can have a special place for that on our website. But my point here is I think every core request, we should look at it and say, well, we need to make this public. I liked Karen's response to the thought exchange. I didn't like that we did that, because I thought it was the wrong thing to do. But if you got to give it to somebody, like Mark has alluded to, it's going public. So we might as well make it public. So
becomes
rather
ultimately-
than spend time doing a dashboard, which might drive some behavior, I don't know what, but there may be unintended consequences. If this is just about disclosing information and true transparency, I think every core request that comes in, we should look at it and say, how do we make this publicly available to everybody all the time?
Well, I think you and Mark are talking about the same thing. It's just the method of putting the information on the website.
Well, I'm not even interested in calling it a dashboard. You could create a page on the website that just says Cora requests. And you click on it, and there's the list. And they can click on each one of them and see the requests.
And that's what you're talking about, correct, Chris?
Well, yeah, because for me personally, I'm a process-oriented guy. So I'm sitting here thinking, why are we redoing the same thing? I don't know how many times. Let's just put it out there. And if it's the same thing, then great. But what will happen, any core requests about enrollment, you're just pointing them there, I hope.
Try, yeah.
And so welcome them in, because they can go look. They just need a URL, perhaps.
I usually just attach, if I've got that.
So what I'm not saying that may be different is I don't think we present a Cora issue here, a website with a page that says, here's all the Cora requests. I would rather just look at it and say, here's information. This information belongs in financial. This one belongs in personnel. This one belongs in operations. This one's in communications. It's wherever they belong, wherever the information belongs. That's where I think. I'm not suggesting that we put it all in one place. I'm saying put it where it would normally show up, and then do the redirect on all the future core requests for it.
Well, someone may, and I'm assuming this has been a request, have people asked you for, I want every core request in the last 6 months?
Yeah.
So there you go, Chris. So you have your page that lists all your core requests, and then you click and you go get it.
Actually, the lawyer thought that was the funniest request when I got cored for the chorus.
But my understanding is this has happened more than once.
Yeah.
I know. Here's my concern is, we've just spent a lot of time talking about what I'm gonna call a nuisance. It's an information nuisance, because people are either wanting it for their own bias purposes, or whatever. I don't care why they want it. My point is, if it's public and we have to give it to them, then let's just make it available. And Mark, I don't care. I don't care if they get a core request for all the core requests. I don't care. I mean, but some
Well, we
core
could just
requests
put,
are legitimate.
we could just actually put it out there and say, relevant information that's been requested that we think would benefit everyone to have, or something like that.
But
So
then
it's,
you're limiting it. So you're not gonna put everything out there.
well, I think that allows you to not put out the teacher contract or whatever it is, yeah.
It kind of defeats the purpose as far as I'm concerned. The point is, and I think it is, I think this is a great conversation. I think it is that important. It is that if one person's gonna ask for the information, we should just put it out there. Because if one person has it and they can try to manipulate it or try to use it to just put it out there. And then if people question something that they see on social media or see anywhere, they can go back to the district website and they can see every core request made. And I get that it's gonna add a little bit of time. I think it might work itself out in time, that it may save you in some places and cause you work in others. But just like anything else you do on a website, once you figure out how to do it, it gets quick. You know, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. So to me, it's that important because I've had people come to me and tell me that they wanna see this. I've had multiple people tell me that they wanna see a page on our website that lists every core request.
Well, and Mark, it's probably because you see the social media aspect of it, how it is used or misused in social media, because they may take half a shot of one page, half shot of another, and here's their point, instead of whatever the document is. I get that. We can have no control over social media, nor do I want to.
But we can control
venture
the
that.
information.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just making it a focus of a Cora dashboard or whatever we're talking about, to me, is an overkill of being transparency, because you raised this question right up front. Are we encouraging or are we discouraging? And I think there's unintended potential consequences here that could be problematic. I don't know, but
It is.
You raised a good question.
I think the word problematic was used by somebody else in the conversation with.
Now, if you're doing analytics, I get it.
Yeah.
If you post something without comment, which is what we would be doing, we're not encouraging or discouraging. It is what it is.
They core the list right now, and somebody probably does analytics.
Well, they can do analytics
Yeah.
all they want. That's, again, we're not.
No.
I mean, for me, it's that important. I would like to see us do this and try it for some period of time, and then the board after November can decide to get rid of it if they want, that's fine. I think it's that important that I would like to see this done.
And I'm just trying to add clarity to what this done means. Because I'm not of the opinion that you isolate all this information into one place. I don't care if there's been a core request. I think what message are we sending here? Why are we having this core request? Just to share public information? If it's public information that needs to be disclosed, put it where it belongs within our domain.
Well, it will
That's
be
my
there.
only difference with you.
Well, it will be there, but there'll be some place where you can go look and get the list.
Why?
So Chris, what you're saying is you put it out there, put the core request out in the specific section. So if it's financial or enrollment, there would be a section on that webpage to list that information, correct?
No, I would say put it on our financial
Put the
transparency page that we already have.
Okay.
The information needs to be public, but it ought to be where it belongs, not in a Cora domain. We're talking, what I'm hearing now is the whole domain for Cora. And I'm not suggesting we classify it within that Cora domain. I'm not doing that. If all the only thing of this that I could see that would be in the Cora domain is the actual request, period. But the actual information needs to be where it belongs within the district domain.
But if the information's posted and it came through a Quora, wouldn't it be watermarked and the information would be there?
Well, if you posted it there, it would be. I wasn't suggesting that, though. I'm
Okay.
suggesting that this is information that we should regularly post on our website, where it belongs.
Okay.
if somebody's interested in it and it has value to somebody, it may have value to a lot of people.
Okay.
So the only
So-
way I agree 100% with Mark is on the Cora thing is, well, here they all are. Here's the request. But I'm not in favor of then creating a warehouse of all that information under the Cora domain.
Well, he could point it. There could be a link.
I like that, yeah.
Well, so let's see if this will fly. Hey, you know, like I said, I'm coming to the tail end. I can throw things out and see what happens. I'd like to make a motion to post all core requests on the district website to include all public information, to include the core request itself, and the time spent and the answer to complete the request. Does that make sense, Bob?
The request, the time, and the
So
record.
on this list, like we were talking about, the
Right.
one page, I think it's important to show this is how much time we spent on this. That's information.
So request time and record, and a link to the record.
And I'll be honest with
And I
you.
can make the record live, well, the record would live, whether it's finance and on the finance page or on a Cora page, it's gonna live there.
You're talking implementation.
Right.
I don't want to talk about implementation.
Okay.
All I'm saying is I would like to see, like I made this request, Kathy, I hope you got that one as I was saying it, is basically to go out there and publish all core requests. Now, however you do it, that the administration thinks is, we asked Karen, superintendent, to go do this. All we do is suggest what we'd like to see, then you guys can come back and say, here's what we think you wanted. I don't want to get into the weeds.
Well, I'll second it.
Okay, let's talk about discussion. You know, what was appealing to me is taking work off Bob's plate. And what I'm hearing is this isn't really gonna get us there. Is that correct, Bob?
Probably not.
Okay.
But Matt, just to interject, it will allow us to do a better performance appraisal of his time, because we're gonna track his time on this work.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns?
I've already shared my perspective.
And then, Mark, I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on this motion before we take a vote. So what you're saying is on one page on the website, it's going to list who requested it, how much time it took Bob, and the document that was produced.
To satisfy the request.
And if the document wasn't produced and there was a hyperlink sent by Bob via email, then that would be listed.
Correct. But I really don't want to get in the weeds.
What about the time?
I don't think everybody heard what you just said. He asked me, is it important to track the time? I would say yes. I want to know how much time was spent to fulfill that
Yes.
core request. I think it's important for not only us to see as board members, you know, how long did it take to fulfill this request? I think community members could ask the question. They'll look at this and say, well, I wonder how long it took. I'll do a core request to see how long it took. Just put it out there to get rid of any other questions. Because Bob knows, right? I mean, that's probably one of the easiest things we're going to add is you're going to say 50 minutes. That's easy. You're smiling like it's not easy. That's got to be the easiest part.
I just think it's funny. I'm sorry.
It doesn't mean we can't change later on, you know.
Bob, what if any issues do you see with this motion that's before the board?
I go back to my original, you know, I'm of two minds on that. One is, okay, if somebody finds it necessary, maybe others find it needed.
Okay.
That's fine. But as far as redaction of names from who requested it, that's really not possible because that's, the name who requested it is part of the Cora. Now their email, those things aren't. So there's a little more work there. I just thought about that, you know, there's a little more there because I usually don't have to go out and redact a printed email. But I'd have to print the email. It's a little
Do
bit.
you have to, or should maybe you look in to see what you should or shouldn't do?
No, I have to.
Let me ask one more, or make a real comment, sorry. Can we modify the request to suggest that they do a pilot and figure out exactly what this means, and then bring it back to us after they have a chance to really study the issue better, how they implement it, et cetera, and then give us a clue of how much time we're really putting on them?
You mean to actually do a pilot, or?
Actually do it so that we
You
can.
can say, do it for 6 months, and then we'll review it.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting.
That's fine.
1 January.
Okay, with that being.
Starting now.
With that being said, there's,
I'd like to see
There's
6
an
months, I'm
election
sorry, Matt.
coming, I know.
I'd like to see at least 6 months. Can you have this by August?
Sure.
Well, Bob, you can say no.
When have I ever said no?
So September, October, November, December, January, February.
Okay.
To put it into the, and we agree that we'll put this in the February school board meeting to review, whether it continues or is discontinued.
Okay.
But does that mean it's public?
Well, it has to be public, I mean, that's the.
That's what, I was not suggesting that. I was suggesting that they just do a prototype privately. Then we can evaluate it and then take it public. So I had a little different idea than just going public with a prototype.
The only thing I would add is that then Bob's gonna get a core request for the prototype. Seriously.
Yep.
Okay, then you give it to them access to it. I mean,
Now I think we're kind of overdoing the whole, I think we should just do it, and if the board later on decides that it's something we don't want to do, the board can vote to discontinue it. I really would like to be on the record that I supported doing this, that I thought it was that important. I really want to stand behind this. So I don't mind doing a pilot, but I want it to be public, and you can, we've done that before, where like, we'll revisit this in 6 months to see, was it successful, what were the pros, cons, whatever, and then the board in 6 months can vote again to discontinue it. But I don't want to be like Congress at the point that we have to renew it every 6 months. So I would just say that we understand that we're going to do this, and then in 6 months.
But a future board can then do it.
Well, exactly. That's my whole point. Is I think we should just turn this on
Just
because
go through year end.
I want to be in support of this. I want to be behind this, and I want the community to see that this is that important to me. So I think we should just do it. As the motion that I just did. I think it's that important to show that we want to be completely transparent. And like you said, a future board, 6 months from now, whoever gets on the board, they can say, I don't like this and I want to shut it down. And by golly, they can do it anytime they want. So I'd like to just call for a vote.
okay, that's fair. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. One comment from me is I would support a pilot, 6 months. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Mr. Clausen,
Nay?
Mr. Poff,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
No.
Okay, motion passed. Mr. Foster, do you feel like you have enough direction?
Got it.
All right. And one other thing is, if you could just keep us posted if this becomes burdensome for you.
You bet.
All right, and we have about 45 minutes to get through the rest of the agenda. Next item is 8, Monument Academy contract changes.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Board President Matthew Clausen to finalize and sign the attached contracts with Monument Academy on behalf of the Lewis Palmer Board of Education.
Do we have a second?
I can't see the motion, but I'll second it.
Do we need
No.
more conversation to
I
get
was
a
just
second?
trying, no, I was just trying to read it.
I don't see it.
There, I just got it. I second the motion.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I have a question and perhaps a comment. So I see that what we've done here is essentially taken the existing Monument Academy charter that was for 10 years from last March. And now we're bifurcating it into elementary only and secondary only, correct? That's what this is doing.
Yes. The only other thing it's doing is Monument Academy has chosen to move to what's called the insured model for special education instead of, we were sort of doing a hybrid for a number of years, and Cheryl, if you've got further questions, Cheryl can explain. So based on Monument Academy's wishes, we're using a different model for special education. It honestly will result in about the same cost, at least for next year. It may change over time, but we just changed them from this hybrid that they kind of created, and they said we'd like to just go back to the standard insured model.
So that was my comment, but I do, after listening to the audience tonight, the public, does this have any bearing whatsoever on what we were listening to earlier?
So, no, because there's two aspects of when you approve the charter application, which is different than the contract. One of the aspects of the charter application is they have to talk about where they plan to locate it. And they gave two options as to where they plan to locate it. So if the board at that time, that is your opportunity to object or do whatever you want to with regard to the location. Or if you feel like it meets the needs of being within the constituent base and it's within our district, and you believe that those two options are viable, then that's not something that you would bring up as you look at the application. So they did present two options in their applications. Application to expand to high school, you approve that. The other aspect is the statute that you have in front of you, and we will look at it a little bit more. We'll pull our attorney in again to look at it one more time. But that requires that the planning commission in order for there to be a hearing in front of the school board, it's remanded back to the Board of Education by the county. And they did not do that. They passed and approved the location. So there's an aspect of there that if, from my understanding, and we can run it by the attorney, but from my understanding of the statute is that only comes back to the Board of Education to do the hearing and do that decision base if for some reason the county commissioners choose to do that, and they did not.
Okay, so just so I'm clear in my own mind, what we have here is a bifurcation of the existing contract between secondary and elementary, totally at the request of Monument Academy.
Yes.
We're not driving this request.
No, we are not at all, and this is different than the application. The application still stands.
Application for the high school, right, two different things, I got that.
No, I'm sorry, Chris, nowhere in the contract does it say that we're agreeing to the location, that we're good with it?
No, and there's nothing, this contract is not about location, it's all about our oversight and our duties as an authorizer.
Now, can I read or make the statement what's on the bottom? This is public at the bottom here, right? Because I think it's important. Some people may ask, why are we doing this? And I get what Chris has said. The bottom line is we're going to two contracts.
We just took the same contract, yeah.
One is for their elementary school, one is for their middle and high school. So they're separate contracts at this point. And so I just want to make sure everybody understood that. But nothing's really changed. I mean, the few things that you said. But, I really have a tough time with this because I know I was adamantly opposed to the location at Highway 105. We're talking back in 2008 or 2007. When this came up, it was never, now see, there's no request there. There was no charter authority, because they already had a charter. They basically said, here's where we're going. And there was no conversation of, hey, D38, can you say it's okay? That's my perception. Now, maybe because I was a baby board member back then, and Cheryl wants to talk. I don't remember saying, I'm good with that location. Help me out, Cheryl.
So it does say under operational powers in the contract, and I traced this back while all this was going on, and this same basic link, which has been in the contract with Monument Academy prior to 2006, based on your question, and it does say in the contract that Monument Academy shall have the authority to exercise independently, also consistent with federal and state law, the following powers, and it goes through the powers of importance to this conversation is lease, rent, or purchase facilities for school purposes. Purchase, lease, rent, furniture, it goes on and on. So by contract, Monument Academy did not have to go to you all when the school was built on Highway 105. It just had to comply with state and federal law.
And that hasn't changed. That clause has
hasn't
been in there.
changed.
Okay,
And
and,
that-
I'm assuming that's a standard
Mm-hmm.
contract or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so that's where you're coming from, Karen, from what you just said. I'm trying to understand this, even though it's late in the game for me, that the county commissioners, because I know when the county commissioners were, I was told this, I don't know, I was told this, that when they were asked, you know, we want to talk about this, they kicked it right back to us. They said, if you don't like where that location of that school is, you need to go talk to District 38 school.
That was just done?
Well, exactly, that's why we had this visit.
Oh, okay.
It's because the county commissioners told them that, and what you just said was, if they'd have voted, or if they'd have voted to send it to us and say, hey, you know, we're not comfortable giving approval, but it passed 3-2.
Right, and again, my understanding, we'll clarify to make sure, but they would have not taken a vote. They would have said, we are not ready to vote on this. We would like to remand it back to the district for public hearing or whatever, you know, for the district to weigh in, and they didn't do that. They went ahead and voted.
Okay, so it leads to another question, and I apologize, Karen. And Cheryl, I think you can help. You know, whenever anybody talks about housing development going in a certain place, they have to submit something to the school district, and we either are favorable, negative, or neutral. And 9 times out of 10, we just stay neutral. We say that we have no opinion on this housing development, right? I mean, in the past?
In the past, in the distant past, I'd say yes. Now we will,
Now things have changed.
Yeah, now we're telling them, you know, we're out of space, and we have been for quite a few
Right,
years
which makes
now.
sense. There's a good reason for saying, but typically we were given the opportunity to say yay, nay, or neutral.
And it doesn't necessarily change the outcome, by the way.
No, I understand. But at no point, I just want to be clear on this, at no point did anybody ask this school board, I mean, I want to make sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, no one asked us whether we thought that was a good location or not. And no one asked for the 105 either. Like you said, it was in the contract. But this is a new building. This is a new high school. This is a new authorization, a new contract.
Right.
Paul, we would have brought it to the board because you have to see all those.
Right. And a lot of times we handle that in the consent agenda.
Right.
But something like this we probably would have brought up, never happened.
Right.
I just want to make sure that everything's clear on what transpired in all these events.
And what control we have.
Right, exactly. I just want the facts out there, you know, what it is. Which is why it's very important for me to say, and someone correct me if I'm wrong on this, the Monument Academy Charter School is not adding any middle school seats. I mean,
And from what I understand, if they don't bring it, if they stop the vote and they don't take the vote and they send it back to us and say, school board, you know, we're not sure about this, we're hearing whatever, you need to have a hearing and determine if this is the right thing. If they say they're not doing that, or they just go ahead and vote, we can't do that after the fact. If they make a vote, because they are the final decision.
My guess is someone's misinterpreting this statute, but we'll clarify.
We'll clarify it with
Yeah.
legal,
And
just to make sure.
To answer Mark's question about the middle school addition of seats, this contract itself would indicate to me that according to their website, they're adding 350 middle school seats, but those middle school seats won't go to the elementary school. So they're gonna transfer
Right.
the existing 350 middle school students to their new school, and then the elementary school will only be elementary school. So I'm saying yes, and this contract validates it.
right, so you could say, oh, we're adding 350 seats out at the high school. That's true.
It's true.
But they're taking the 350 from the elementary. So really what they're doing is they're adding approximately 300 to 350 elementary.
Although I don't know that they plan to add that much.
Maybe not that many,
Right,
but that's what they're
but that's the point is you could say, well, we're gonna add 350 middle school seats at the new high school. That's true, but you're not adding capacity to the middle school, which is very important that the truth and the facts get out to the community, and that's what's important. So when there's this disinformation for whatever reason or agenda that a person or persons may have, they're hurting the kids. That's ultimately what's happening here. If they're spreading the lie that they're gonna add the capacity and we don't need to, they're hurting the children. And that's what upsets me, because it's not gonna affect us. But sorry for that, we have a motion, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Matt.
there's a motion. Are we ready to take a vote?
Yep.
Ms. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Plouffe.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Yes. Aye.
All right, next agenda item, adoption of the 2020 Colorado Academic Standards. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the 2020 academic standards.
I'll second if I can't do the motion.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
Can I get some elaboration on this
Yeah,
one?
we are required by law, and this came up a year ago, and Lori and Dr. Benton can address this. We're required by law to, we have until June 30th, correct? Or is it June 30th? To either adopt our own standards that meet or exceed the Colorado standards, or adopt the Colorado standards, now that the Colorado has new revised standards. As you recall, I don't know, was it 2 years ago, we went through the whole study about whether we should do our own, and we figured out it was quite a bit of time and money to do that. And the key factor is you still have to meet the exact same. So you're basically rewriting, you must at least have standards that are equal and identical in expectations as Colorado. You can use your own words, but it still has to be the same expectations. So this is just our time when we have to declare that we are adopting the Colorado academic standards.
And this will be every 6 years.
Oh, so it's every 6 years?
It's every 6 years now.
Okay, so legislation that was just passed this past,
So that last iteration for school improvement dictated that it was now an every 6 year cycle. And it started in 2017 with community feedback. And
Right.
now it's a revision, and so there's an ongoing process.
okay. But the some legislation that was passed this year that some are still asking questions on, that's not included in this, correct? Let's just say 1032 is a prime example of, there's still a lot of discussion of what exactly does this mean?
So that's not in the
Okay.
The 1032 has not been placed into the standards in
Okay.
terms of definitions or expectations. So these were created in 2018 and based on, or not created, but revised based on feedback from the state in 2017. So now here we are in 2019. We need to implement by 2020.
Okay.
Don't they normally ask the State Board of Education to come up with the plan to implement the laws?
They do rule, and then CDE does reg, but yes.
And we still can have a conversation and maybe do a resolution this fall saying that we don't support or what. I mean, we can still do that.
I just
But
wanted,
you
like I
still
said,
have to follow them
Right, well, that is correct. The law.
by law.
I just wanted to make sure, like I said, it just says the board will be asked to adopt the 2020 Colorado academic standards, so I wanted to make sure I understood.
It's
I
pretty
don't
straightforward.
I didn't know what standards it is, because I know there's been some changes, like to history, but I didn't know if.
There's been some clarification. There's
Okay.
been different revisions based on feedback from different groups, clarification, separation of different in language arts, and then also combination. So it just depends on grade level and iteration. A lot of it is very similar. It's just clarification of language. It's also, they've streamlined some standards, so there's some fewer in certain areas. They've lumped several of the performing arts. So again, it's just more of it's a revision. It's not a complete new addition, as it was back when the CAS originally came out in 2009 and 2010.
So we, as a school district, have followed this since 2009-10?
Yes, both iterations.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Mr. Ymca?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Plouffe.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Wongman, any changes on the enrollment dashboard that we need to be aware of?
No, if you annualize the enrollment, not including Monument Academy, you would realize we will be at 57 students on October 1 as opposed to the 83 that we budgeted. Given that a lot of growth happens in the summer, I'm not concerned about that at this point, but you all will need to continue to follow that to make sure you meet it, but I think we're comfortable at this point.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item, financial comparison data. Any changes there that we need to be aware of?
No, we have 2 months, both April and May. You just got May today because the meeting was so early this month. I ran analysis one more time of budget versus actual on both the revenue side and the expense side. I believe you'll find yourself favorable to budget on your revenue side when we get to year end, and about spot on your expenditure side on the general fund. So things look fine as we move forward.
Moving on to the next agenda item, the audit firm financial engagement letter.
This is normal for this time of year that we go ahead and acknowledge that we are engaging CLA as our auditing firm for the next school year, basically. Pre-audit has been completed. I believe they found one minor issue. Other than that, it was clean. They actually moved forward and were able to start on year-end processes, which is great. So our recommendation is that we continue to work with CLA, move forward.
Let me add to that. So last year, that was their 5th year, and normally you do some sort of transition over time of having the same audit firm. It's an internal control that they force on many entities. Last year, we made the exception not to make that change because I was new, and I was still trying to learn the finances here. This year, with a change in the CFO role, again, it's probably not in our best interest to change the auditor at the same time. So the continuity of that auditor is going to be very helpful for our district as we make the transition here.
Yeah, it's a little late at this point anyway, really, because we're at year end right now.
We are, but I totally agree with Mr. Taylor. And there are other ways to make changes in your audit partner without changing firms as you move forward.
Right.
So you have some options in the future as big as CLA is.
Any other discussion on this topic? All right, before I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented, are there any discussion items there? All right, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Everyone's expecting me, I'll second it.
Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, Ms. Namika?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Paul.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.